Welcome to my channel. In my channel you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
American Comics. Rise of the Dark Tyrant. Part 2. Vroom. As the roar of the V-10 engine faded, Tony Stark drove that R8 away, leaving only the afterimage of its taillights in the blink of an eye. This filthy rich guy sure runs fast. Gil Chong stood in the underground garage, looking at the empty driveway. He was still clutching the keys to that golden Apollo. He's just gone, leaving me here all alone. Is this how billionaires treat their guests? The corner of Gil Chang's mouth twitched slightly, although he knew Tony was in a hurry to save his own life. This feeling of being used like a tool and then discarded still made him very unhappy. Forget it, for the sake of that 10% stake, Daddy forgives you. Gil Chong pressed the button on the key in his hand. Beep beep. The headlights of that extravagantly styled, all-gold Apollo supercar suddenly lit up, like an awakening golden beast. He had to admit, though Tony's taste was flashy, this car was truly cool. Gil Chong pulled open the scissor door and sat in the driver's seat. The leather seats provided a strong sense of enclosure, smelling of the fragrance of money. However, just as he was about to start the car, an awkward problem arose. Wait, where's the party? Gil Chong was stunned. He had been so busy acting cool and talking business that Tony only mentioned going to a party without giving him the address at all. Where the hell was he supposed to go to have fun? Just then, an elegant British accent suddenly came through the car's speakers. Good evening, Mr. Gil Chong. I am Jarvis. Mr. Stark has preset the navigation for you. The destination is Mr. Stark's private oceanfront villa in Malibu. Specifically, the famous 10,880 City of Freedom Way. Gil Chong raised an eyebrow and touched the steering wheel with some surprise. Wow, Jarvis is even installed in this car. Just how high is Tony's dependence on AI? Since I know the way, that makes things easy. Gil Chong floored the gas pedal. Boom, the engine let out a beastly roar, and the golden supercar instantly catapulted forward. Turning into a golden lightning bolt, it rushed out of the underground garage. Although compared to his own flight speed, this car was as slow as crawling. This feeling of flying close to the ground with the G-force pushing him back into the seat still had its own unique charm. Especially on a night like this, having just saved the world and enjoying the spotlight. This is the life of the Homelander. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, the Triskelion. Inside the director's office, Nick Fury sat behind his desk, his single eye staring intently at the computer screen in front of him. Playing on the screen was the satellite surveillance footage of Gil Chong, tearing the warship apart, in space earlier. Although the image was somewhat blurry, those two heat vision beams that looked like divine judgment, and the terrifying image of him flying while standing on a nuclear missile, still made the king of spies' scalp tingle. So this is the Homelander. Fury's finger lightly tapped the desk, his brow furrowed deeply. This kind of power was completely beyond the control of S.H.I.E.L.D. It couldn't even be compared to nuclear weapons. If this Gil Chong was in a bad mood one day and wanted to kick the earth like a ball, who could stop him? That alien prince with the hammer? Or that green big guy who only knows how to smash things? Probably neither. Director. The office door was pushed open, and Agent Maria Hill, dressed in a tight uniform, walked in. Her expression was equally solemn. The target has left Stark Tower, Hill reported, holding a tablet. According to traffic surveillance, he is driving one of Tony Stark's sports cars toward Malibu. It looks like he's going to attend the party hosted by Stark. Fury turned off the screen and rotated his chair, his dark face appearing even deeper in the shadows. He went to a party. One moment he's in the Himalayas looking for that mysterious sorcerer, and the next he's back to party. This guy. Fury felt he couldn't see through this John Gilchang at all. He wasn't as pure as Captain America, nor as flamboyant as Tony, and certainly not as evil as Loki. He was like a freak who possessed the power of a god but was full of worldly desires. Director. Hill hesitated for a moment before asking. Considering the target's extreme danger, do we need to initiate the countermeasure protocols? Or continue maintaining the highest level of surveillance? Though she knew the so-called countermeasure protocols might be a joke in front of this man. Fury was silent for a few seconds, then waved his hand. No, now is not the time. Fury stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the night outside. Tony just sent me a message. He said this Gil Chong has agreed to join the Avengers. What? Hill was stunned for a moment. He agreed. On the rooftop, wasn't he still? That's exactly Tony Stark's talent. Fury snorted coldly. Although he didn't like Tony, he had to admit that the playboy had a knack for handling interpersonal relationships, especially with fair-weather friends. Although this doesn't mean he's one of ours. At least it means he's temporarily willing to stand on our side, or rather, on Earth's side. As long as he doesn't go crazy, we cannot take the initiative to provoke a bull that can shatter the Earth. Saying this, Fury turned around and picked up the black leather trench coat hanging on the rack. Hill, get the car ready. Director, where are you going? Malibu. Fury put on his sunglasses, covering that calculating single eye. Since it's an Avengers party, as the founder, how could I be absent? And, Fury added in his heart, he had to personally come into contact with this Homelander. Not just to assess his psychological state, but more importantly, to find a weakness. All mortals have weaknesses, and gods are no exception. As long as it's a living creature, there must be something that can restrain it. Some kind of radiation, some kind of substance, or some kind of psychological defect. If he didn't find this Achilles heel, if he didn't find the kryptonite for him, he, Nick Fury, would never sleep peacefully for the rest of his life. Malibu Beach, inside Stark's cliffside mansion. The ghostly blue light of the holographic projection shone on Tony Stark's face. He stared fixedly at the rotating atomic model in the air. His large, caramel-colored eyes were filled with unbelievable ecstasy at this moment. Is this what that old guy left for me? Tony muttered to himself, his fingers trembling as they passed through the model of the never-before-discovered new element. That's right, everything that guy named John Gilchang said was true. Inside that old-fashioned expo model, the key to the future was truly hidden. Jarvis, tell me the results of the theoretical simulation. Sir, according to the preliminary deduction, this new element can completely replace the palladium element, and the energy output efficiency is more than 20 times the current level. Yeah, Tony punched the air violently. The death countdown that had plagued him for so long, the toxin flowing in his blood, finally had a cure. If it weren't for the fact that the current equipment still needed adjustment, he would have wanted to rush into the laboratory right now and build this thing. Tony took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the excitement in his heart. No rush, no rush. Anyway, the god of death has already been kicked out the door. Tonight is a time for celebration. Jarvis, crank up the party music. Tonight, I'm going to drink every last drop in the wine cellar. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the villa. Boom, that golden Apollo supercar let out a low roar and stopped steadily at the entrance. The car doors rose. Gil Chong, dressed in a black suit, stepped out. Welcome, Mr. Gil Chong. Pepper was already waiting at the door. Although her face still carried the exhaustion from the great battle, she maintained a proper smile. Good evening, Ms. Potts. Gil Chong nodded slightly, revealing that standard Homelander-style smile, sunny, confident, and full of aggression. Just call me Pepper. Pepper stepped aside to lead the way. Tony is waiting for you inside, along with several other Avengers. Walking into the hall of this extremely luxurious villa, the first thing that caught the eye was the huge floor-to-ceiling window and the pitch-black sea outside. The hall was already filled with all kinds of expensive drinks and food. Although the atmosphere was not exactly lively, it was still quite harmonious. Thor, that big guy, was sitting on the sofa. He was holding a beer mug in his hand, grinning foolishly at the news being replayed on the TV. Ha ha, look at that hammer strike. This is the power of Asgard. Meanwhile, at the bar, Natasha, in black tight-fitting casual wear, and Hawkeye Barton, who was wiping his fingers, turned their heads almost at the same time. As top agents, their alertness was carved into their bones. The moment they saw Gil Chong walk in, both of their eyes narrowed slightly. Although back on the top floor of Stark Tower, the atmosphere had been a bit stiff for the sake of the shield director's face. But it was undeniable. If it weren't for this man, New York today would probably have already turned into ruins. Hey, looks like our protagonist has arrived. Barton stood up first and walked over with a smile. Natasha also put down the wine glass in her hand. Her charming eyes swept over Gil Chong, and then she walked over gracefully. Very happy to see you again, Mr. Gil Chong. Natasha extended her hand, her face wearing that signature, enigmatic, charming smile. Or should I say, Homelander. Gil Chong looked at the fair palm extended in front of him. He wasn't in a hurry to shake it. His gaze unscrupulously wandered over Natasha's body. Must say, Black Widow is indeed Black Widow. The curves outlined by this tight-fitting suit, especially the scale of her chest, indeed possessed the capital to drive countless men crazy. But, Gil Chong sneered inwardly, a product of the Red Room, wandering between countless men and missions. The mileage on this car is probably higher than that of a Shield Quinjet. Too dirty. He is Homelander, and he has a cleanliness obsession. This kind of public bus, looking as fine, but actually wanting to eat it. Forget it. Just call me John. Gil Chong reached out and took Natasha's hand. It felt slightly cool, soft, and boneless. If one ignored the thin calluses on her palms from long-term gun use, it was indeed a beautiful pair of hands. Gil Chang's fingers lightly rubbed the back of Natasha's hand. With a hint of obvious flirtation, then he quickly let go. Hello, Agent. Natasha's eyebrows raised imperceptibly. She was a professional. This level of groping couldn't even count as a tickle to her. But this man's gaze, that gaze, which was smiling but filled with disdain and playfulness, made her very uncomfortable. It was like looking at a piece of merchandise that, while exquisite, one had no intention of buying. And me, Clint Barton. Hawkeye also reached out his hand, helping Natasha out of the awkward situation. Thanks for last time on the rooftop. Small matter. Gil Chong replied casually, not even looking at Barton directly, his gaze still lingering on Natasha. Barton was also a sharp person and immediately sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. He said half-jokingly, "Hey, buddy, rein in that gaze. Natasha is not a woman to be trifled with. Be careful, or she might sneak into your room in the middle of the night and give you a shot." Is that so? Gil Chong laughed, completely unconcerned. He leaned forward slightly, looking down at Natasha from a height, his voice magnetic and low. That would be great. I am someone who is best at dealing with people who are hard to deal with. The thornier the rose, the more interesting it is to pick, isn't it? Natasha crossed her arms, looking at him with a half-smile. Save it, big boy. Don't think about those useless things. In our line of work, there's no room for feelings. Feelings. Gil Chong acted as if he had heard some kind of joke. He picked up a glass of champagne from the side and swirled it gently. His eyes stared straight at Natasha's proudest assets. Don't misunderstand, lady. I wasn't thinking in that direction either. After all, I know that as agents, the number of people you come into contact with, is indeed quite high. Gil Chong paused deliberately, his tone carrying a hint of undisguised contempt. I just simply think that your chest is indeed broader and more eye-catching than I imagined. The air went silent instantly. Barton's mouth twitched, and he awkwardly turned his head away to pretend to look at the scenery. This wasn't just an implication, this was a direct, in-your-face insult. Natasha's smile stiffened for a moment, and a flash of cold light crossed her eyes. This fool, not only was he mocking her past, but he was also openly harassing her. Did he really think Black Widow was a pushover? Although she couldn't beat him in a fight, but in other aspects. Natasha took a deep breath, and a more brilliant and charming smile blossomed on her face again. She proactively picked up a bottle of strong vodka and walked in front of Gil Chong. It seems Mr. Gil Chong is not only powerful but also has a sharp tongue. Since you are so interested in my chest. Natasha slammed the bottle onto the table with a crisp bang. She looked at Gil Chong provocatively. Then why don't we play some adult games? Dare to have a drink with me. This is the strongest liquor from Russia. Consider it an apology for your compliments just now. Want to get me drunk? Gil Chong looked at that bottle of vodka and sneered inwardly. This woman probably didn't know that, given his current physique, even if he drank the entire wine cellar empty, it wouldn't be any different from drinking plain water. However, looking at Natasha's unyielding attitude, Gil Chong became interested. Gladly, Gil Chong took the bottle and took a direct swig. Then he flashed an extremely friendly smile at Natasha. I hope your alcohol tolerance is as big as your chest. Are you sure? Gil Chong shook the bottle of vodka in his hand, which didn't have much left. He looked at Natasha, his smile still maintaining that flawless, impeccable perfection. A drinking contest with a Kryptonian. That's just like competing with Hulk to see whose pants are of better quality, it's purely asking for humiliation. Of course. Natasha rested one hand on the bar, her bodysuit outlining her breathtaking curves, and she provocatively lifted her chin. What, Mr. Homelander, are you afraid of losing a drinking contest to a mere woman? Ahem. Just then, Hawkeye Barton, who had been silent the whole time, finally couldn't hold back. He put down the rag in his hand and stepped between the two with a headache-inducing expression, looking like an exhausted, worried father. I say, you two, can you calm down? Barton pointed at the pile of priceless furnishings around them, then at the expensive cliffside villa beneath their feet. This is Tony's territory. If you two get drunk and start causing a scene. Natasha, do you know how tight SHIELD's budget is right now? If that one-eyed Director Fury sees the bill, he'll absolutely dock all our pensions. Barton was genuinely panicked. Natasha was one thing. At most, she'd break a few chairs. But who was this guy in front of them? He was a tough guy who could treat a nuclear bomb like a skateboard at the slightest disagreement. If he got drunk, even just a drunken hiccup would probably blast this villa into the Pacific Ocean. Relax, Clint. Natasha glanced at her old partner, a flash of cunning in her eyes. I know my limits, and I'm also very curious to see if the so-called Man of Steel is as invulnerable in the face of alcohol. As an agent, she never fought an unprepared battle. Since she couldn't conquer this man through brute force, she would try to find a breakthrough via physiological functions. Alcohol was often the best catalyst for making a man lower his guard. Fine. Barton sighed helplessly. He knew that once this Black Widow got an idea into her head, even SHIELD's helicourier couldn't pull her back. Then I can only pray that Tony bought massive home insurance. Gil Chong watched this scene, finding it amusing. Want to get me drunk? Looking for weaknesses. This woman's little schemes were practically written all over her face. Since a beautiful lady has extended such an invitation, how could I refuse? Gil Chong casually tossed the wine bottle in his hand. Pop. The bottle landed precisely in a trash can over 10 meters away. Then let's do it. The two walked one after the other toward the bar. Jarvis. Natasha tapped the marble countertop. Bring out all the good stuff Tony has in his collection. Don't try to fob us off with that juice-like champagne. Very well, Agent Romanoff. Jarvis's magnetic British accent sounded from above. Based on the current cellar inventory, I recommend the Spiritus from Poland, with an alcohol content of 96%. Or this house brewed, reinforced tequila, which Mr. Stark calls rocket fuel. I want both. Natasha waved her hand, full of bravado. ZZZZT. The mechanical arm behind the bar operated rapidly, placing several bottles of strong liquor, even the labels of which exuded a dangerous aura, onto the counter. Watching that liquid, which was almost indistinguishable from pure alcohol, Barton's mouth twitched. This is drinking. This is well risking your life. Ha 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 ha. Looks like there's some fun competition going on here. Just then, a hearty, thunderous laugh came from the sofa area. Thor was carrying that empty beer mug, striding over. His blonde hair was a bit messy, and his face had a tipsy flush. He looked to be in high spirits. A drinking contest. Thor slammed the mug onto the bar, his eyes burning with Asgardian competitiveness. In Midgard, I have yet to meet an opponent who can outdrink me. Count me in. Gil Chong shrugged, looking indifferent. I don't mind, the more the merrier. Natasha, however, looked at Thor with some disdain. Big guy, drink if you want, but no one here is going to play Thesamash the mug game with you. Ha, that's for celebration. Thor didn't care at all. He looked at Gil Chong, a hint of fighting spirit in his eyes. We didn't get a chance to fight in the sky earlier, but now, at the drinking table, I must win it back. In Asgard, my tolerance is something even Volstagg has to bow down to. Watching this increasingly out of control scene, Barton felt his scalp tingle. A super agent with abnormal physical fitness. An alien Thor with superhuman constitution. And a man of steel who was even more ridiculously strong. These three guys gathering together for a drinking contest was practically a disaster scene. I'm in too. Barton sighed and sat down at the bar. What? Natasha looked at him with some surprise. Why are you joining the fun? Can't help it. Barton smiled bitterly and spread his hands, taking a glass from the mechanical arm. You're all drinking, wouldn't it be boring if I didn't join? Of course, this was also a matter of male pride. Even if I'm not good at fighting, when it comes to drinking. I, Clint Barton, am at least a famous alcoholic at S.H.I.E.L.D. If worse comes to worst, I'll just drink all the alcohol here so you guys can't compete anymore. Interesting. Gil Chong watched this group of fired-up Avengers, his smile deepening. He picked up the bottle of spiritus, not even bothering to use a glass, and poured himself a full cup. The transparent liquid rippled in the glass, emitting a pungent smell of alcohol. Since everyone is in such high spirits, Gil Chong raised his glass and looked around. Let's skip the formalities. Bottoms up. Whoever falls first is a coward, how about that? Good. Thor was the first to respond. Not wanting to be outdone, he grabbed a bottle of tequila and poured it into his glass. For the glory of Asgard. Natasha gritted her teeth, a fierce look flashing in her emerald eyes. I'm into the end. Cheers. Clink. 4 glasses collided in the air, making a crisp sound. Immediately after, gulp, gulp, without any hesitation, the 4 of them tilted their heads back and downed the strong liquor that was enough to burn through their throats. The moment Barton drank it, his face turned red, and he felt as if his whole body was on fire, baring his teeth and gasping for air. Cough, cough. This stuff is really potent. Natasha, on the other hand, remained composed, her eyes only glazing over for a split second before regaining clarity. This was the resistance trained into her by the Red Room. To her, alcohol was not much different from water. Thor laughed loudly and wiped the liquor from his mouth. Refreshing. Now this is what you call liquor. Only Gil Chong remained. He put down his empty glass, his face not even flushing. That 96% spiritus entered his body and was instantly broken down into water and carbon dioxide by his super metabolic system. It didn't even have time to produce a single calorie of heat. Is that it? Gil Chong smacked his lips, looking at the empty glass with some disdain. The taste is average, it's a bit like industrial alcohol diluted with water. Jarvis, bring more. I want to drink a barrel. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole place went silent. Barton looked at Gil Chang's calm and indifferent demeanor, his eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. A barrel? Are you drinking this stuff like it's cola? Ding. Detected Hawkeye doubting his life, popularity points plus 60. Ding. Detected Black Widow deeply struck, popularity points plus 80. Great tolerance. Thor's eyes lit up, as if he had found a kindred spirit, and he cheered loudly. Worthy of the man who can ride a nuclear bomb. Is your stomach also made of steel? Come, I'm in too. Thor, not wanting to be outdone, poured another glass and downed it again. I'm in too. Natasha's competitive spirit was thoroughly ignited. She refused to believe this man's body structure was truly made of iron. Another glass went down. Barton looked at these 2 lunatics, then at Gil Chong beside him, who was drinking as if it were water. He gritted his teeth and stomped his foot. I'm in. He also downed a glass. However, this was just the beginning. The mechanical arm worked tirelessly, filling glass after glass. Gil Chong was like a bottomless pit, accepting everything, and even drinking faster and faster. Although Thor had a divine body, he couldn't handle this method of drinking, and his eyes were already beginning to drift. A flush appeared on Natasha's cheeks, and her eyes became somewhat unfocused, but she still stubbornly refused to admit defeat. As for Barton, he had already slumped on the bar counting stars. Just as Gil Chong picked up the 4th bottle of vodka, preparing to drink straight from the bottle. Ding! The sound of the elevator door opening rang out. Tony Stark, dressed in casual clothes with still damp hair, walked up from the laboratory below. He had clearly just taken a shower and was holding a towel to dry his hair. He looked up and saw the lively scene at the bar. The table was full of empty wine bottles, and there was a figure in a black suit holding a bottle and drinking wildly, along with 3 teammates swaying unsteadily nearby. Whoa! Tony whistled, tossed the towel aside, and approached with an interested expression. This party looks pretty lively. What are you guys doing? Drinking so enthusiastically. Tony walked over to Gil Chong, looked at the bottle in his hand that was already bottoming out, and raised an eyebrow. Mind if I join you? Just my luck, I just solved a big problem, and I'm in a great mood right now. Gil Chong put down the wine bottle and let out a burp full of the smell of alcohol. He turned his head, looked at the expectant Tony, and revealed that signature, extremely kind, smile. Of course, Tony, but let's get this straight first. Don't vomit on my suit later. Tony Stark reached out and took the glass that still bore Gil Chang's fingerprints. He casually picked up the bottle of liquor and glanced at the label. Tony's hand trembled slightly. He took another look at the homemade tequila next to it, marked with a skull and crossbones. Below it was a line of small print, recommended for use as rocket booster fuel. What the? Tony slammed the bottle down heavily on the bar, looking at the people in front of him with an expression that said they were all insane. You call this drinking? This is a group suicide pact. I usually use ethanol of this purity to clean the spark plugs on my Mark armor. As he spoke, he pointed at Hawkeye Barton, who was slumped motionless over the bar like a dead fish. See, that's a cautionary tale right there. That's the fate of an ordinary human challenging chemical limits. By now, Barton was completely blacked out. He was still mumbling incoherently, things like, I can't go on, or, one more cup. Beside him, Thor Odinson was still sitting, but even his divine eyes were starting to spin. Ha! This kick is strong. Thor let out a belch tinged with electric sparks, his words slurring. On Midgard, this is the first time someone's made me see two moons. Only Gil Chong and Natasha were still standing. Gil Chang's complexion was rosy, his eyes clear, and he even elegantly adjusted his cuff. This amount of alcohol was really no different from mouthwash to him. In contrast, Natasha, the battle-hardened female agent, though still maintaining her standing posture. Her charming face was now red as a ripe apple, the stubborn glint in her eyes slowly being devoured by drunkenness. Can you still drink, Agent Romanoff? Gil Chong shook the empty bottle in his hand, wearing that infuriatingly kind smile. You seem a bit unsteady. Do you need a hand? Or you can admit defeat. Don't even think about it. Natasha gritted her teeth, her hand braced against the bar. Again, I can still drink. Enough, enough. Tony couldn't stand it any longer. He stepped between them, waving his hands. What the hell is going on with you two? Today is our victory celebration, not a game of Russian roulette. Tony looked at Gil Chong, his face full of helplessness. Buddy, you two, why pick a fight with a beautiful woman? She's an agent, she has her pride. Gil Chong innocently spread his hands, wearing an, I'm just along for the ride, expression. Heaven is my witness, Tony. This lovely lady insisted on challenging me to a drinking contest. You know, as Homelander, I never refuse a lady's enthusiastic invitation. Even if the invitation is a bit lethal. Who likes drinking with you? Fueled by the alcohol, Natasha glared fiercely at Gil Chong. Her eyes were full of gunpowder, as if she wanted to pull out a gun and empty a clip into him. All right, both of you, pipe down. Tony felt a headache coming on. If this kept up, and these two human weapons started drunkenly rampaging, who would he turn to if they tore apart his newly repaired villa? That black egg, Jarvis, get all this industrial alcohol out of here. Tony snapped his fingers and commanded. Replace it with juice, freshly squeezed, the kind with vitamin C. Whir. Asterisk. Robotic arms quickly went to work, storing all the dangerous spirits deep in the liquor cabinet. In their place appeared several glasses of brightly colored mixed juice. Natasha looked at the orange juice in front of her, shooting Tony a slightly reproachful glance. But she knew there was no point in continuing, because the man in front of her hadn't changed one bit. HMPH. Natasha snorted coldly, picked up her juice, and swayed as she turned and walked towards the outdoor pool. Her retreating figure carried a hint of fleeing in defeat. What could I do? Watching Natasha leave, Gil Chong shrugged at Tony, looking innocent. You saw it, I was just playing along with her act. Seems she flubbed her lines. Seeing the alcohol taken away, Thor looked bored and waved a hand. Forget it. Midgard's liquor is strong, but there are too many rules. With that, the big guy plopped back onto the sofa and went back to watching TV. Tony picked up a glass of chlorophyll juice, looking at Gil Chong with a headache. Listen, major shareholder, you show up and immediately get into it with Natasha like this. If they all pass out drunk later, how am I supposed to keep this party going? I didn't plan on inviting just these few people. Gil Chong chuckled, reaching up to adjust his tie. So they're drunk, so what? True warriors can dance even in their dreams. And besides, Gil Chong pointed towards the door, his ear twitching slightly, a knowing smile spreading across his face. I think your cavalry has arrived. Huh, Tony was momentarily stunned, then his eyes lit up as if remembering something. You mean, before he could finish his sentence, the villa's front door swung open. A wave of fragrant perfume wafted in. A group of stunningly hot, scantily clad blondes, clicking in on high heels, chattered excitedly as they poured inside. It was the cover model squad from Maxim magazine. A full dozen of them. Surprise. Tony spread his arms wide, the gloom on his face completely gone, replaced by the smug grin of a top-tier playboy. Now this is a party. What do you think, Homelander? My taste isn't bad, right? Gil Chong looked at the wave of curvaceous women, all batting their eyelashes at him wildly, and the corners of his mouth shot up. Not bad at all. This was the life he wanted. All that fighting and killing was so boring, this was the treatment a superhero deserved. You're the man, Tony. Gil Chong gave a thumbs up, praising sincerely. When it comes to aesthetics, you've really got it nailed down. Right, I do. Tony lifted his chin proudly, then snapped his fingers. Jarvis, let the music play. Let the dancing begin. Turn off that go-doffel jazz, put on the sickest EDM you've got. Pulsing music instantly blasted through the room, and colorful lights began to flash. The blondes shrieked and rushed onto the dance floor, starting to gyrate wildly to the beat. The previously lifeless villa instantly transformed into a top-tier nightclub. Even Thor, sprawled on the sofa, was jolted awake by the commotion. He opened his eyes, took in the scene, and his jaw dropped. Oh, by the All-Father! Thor slapped his thigh and stood up excitedly. Your mortal revelry is almost on par with my father's feasts in the heavenly palace. Now this is the treatment a warrior deserves. With that, the big guy forgot all about being a god and charged straight into the crowd of women. Gil Chong and Tony exchanged a glance, sharing a knowing smile. Shall we? Let's go. The two of them slid onto the dance floor, one after the other. With his handsome face and the explosive physique his suit couldn't quite conceal, Gil Chong instantly attracted 2 or 3 of the boldest women. Surrounded by the chirping, fluttering beauties, Gil Chong felt utterly content. To hell with S.H.I.E.L.D., to hell with aliens. Tonight, he was the Malibu dance king. Time flew by amidst the alcohol and music. Before they knew it, an hour had passed. Just as the party reached its peak, the villa's front door opened once more. This time, it wasn't beauties who entered. It was a bald head, gleaming darkly even under the flashing lights. Nick Fury, clad in his perennial black leather trench coat, stood in the doorway. Better late than never. Nick Fury stood at the doorway, his one eye scanning the chaotic, wild party scene. The air was thick with the scent of alcohol, perfume, and hormones. Natasha, that crazy woman, was currently sitting on a lounge chair by the pool, staring blankly at the moon in the sky, lost in thought. Barton was slumped over the bar, his hand still gripping an empty glass tightly, twitching occasionally to prove he was still alive. As for Thor, that guy was holding a giant beer barrel, struggling against 2 speakers taller than himself, trying to make out what the heavy metal rock music was actually singing. It seems I've come at a bad time. Fury adjusted his trench coat collar and strode inside. Behind him, Dr. Bruce Banner followed, looking somewhat uneasy. He pushed up his glasses, looking at the extravagant scene, feeling like he didn't know where to put his hands and feet. Director, I don't think this kind of occasion is really suitable for us. Banner whispered, especially you. You know, with your face here, it's like a strict headmaster suddenly showing up at a Halloween party. Fury's black face twitched. Get used to it, Doctor, Fury replied expressionlessly. In this world, someone always has to be the bad guy who ruins the fun. The two walked one after the other through the crowd, arriving at the edge of the dance floor. In the center of the dance floor, Tony Stark was holding a hot blonde, dancing wildly to the music. When Fury walked by, Tony's gaze clearly swept over him. But the next second, that guy acted as if he had seen thin air, turning his head directly. He even deliberately increased the intensity of his movements, loudly flirting with the blonde. "Hey, baby, your dance moves are even more flexible than my armor." "Fury, Tony," Fury shouted. No response. "Stark," Fury raised his volume. Still no response. Tony even leaned his ear toward the blonde's lips and shouted, "What did you say?" "The music is too loud, I can't hear you." Beside him, Banner felt so embarrassed he wanted to crawl into a hole. It was too awkward. This blatant disregard was like rubbing oil on Fury's bald black head. "Childish," Fury snorted coldly, no longer seeking to embarrass himself. His gaze moved past Tony to the other side of the dance floor. There, Gil Chong was embracing women on both sides, his two large hands roaming quite dishonestly over the waists of two cover models. A brilliant smile hung on his handsome face, enjoying this imperial treatment. "Gil Chong." This time Fury didn't shout, but walked straight over, his one eye staring fixedly at him. Gil Chong, who was enjoying life, paused. He slowly turned his head, looking at that bald head reflecting under the lights. The smile at the corner of his mouth retracted slightly, but the disdain in his eyes was not hidden in the slightest. "Tisk." Gil Chong cursed inwardly. This black bald guy was like a sticking plaster, he was everywhere. He let go of the two beauties in his arms and patted their, well, bouncy parts. "Be good, go play over there for a while, brother will come find you later." After saying that, he adjusted his slightly messy suit and walked up to Fury, looking down at him. "Yo, isn't this our director?" Gil Chong picked up a glass of wine, not intending to hand it to Fury, but took a sip himself. "What, does S.H.I.E.L.D. not work overtime at night? Or is it?" Gil Chang's eyes turned cold. "You still haven't given up on that stupid assessment plan. If it's still for that, you can get lost right now." "My patience is limited, Fury." Fury was not deterred. He shook his head, his tone still steady. "It's not for that." "Then what is it for?" Gil Chong raised an eyebrow. "I want to talk to you alone." Fury pointed to the balcony nearby. Gil Chong glanced over, then looked at Fury's face, which was written with, "This is important." "Fine." Gil Chong shrugged. He casually pointed to two other blondes on the dance floor and said to Banner, who was standing awkwardly to the side. "Hey, Bruce, these two are yours. Don't be polite, enjoy yourself." "Banner." Before Banner could refuse, the two enthusiastic ladies were already clinging to him like octopuses. "Oh, is this the big guy who transforms? He's so solid. He looks so cute when he's shy." Banner's face instantly turned as red as a monkey's butt. He thought of Betty, who was far away, and felt the soft sensation on his arms. The guilt and instinctive agitation were fighting wildly. In the end, he could only be passively pulled into the dance floor by the two beauties, twisting stiffly. On the balcony, the sea breeze was cool. Gil Chong leaned on the railing, looking at the pitch-black sea below, swirling his wine glass. "Speak, what is it? Don't tell me you're here to borrow money from me." Fury stood beside him, not looking at the sea, but at Gil Chang's profile. "The assessment matter is cancelled," Fury said. "Tony told me you have agreed to join the Avengers." "That's right." Gil Chong nodded and said matter-of-factly. "After all, I am a superhero full of justice, how could such an organization protecting Earth be without me?" Hearing this, Nick looked at him. "Since you have joined, as a member of the Avengers, we need to let the public know. Tomorrow morning, S.H.I.E.L.D. will arrange a press conference for you to officially announce your identity." Gil Chang's eyes lit up. This black bald guy is quite sensible. Isn't this just sending him popularity points? That's exactly my intention. Gil Chong snapped his fingers, his smile becoming more sincere. "It seems we do have a common language, Director." However, Fury changed the subject, his tone becoming serious. "Apart from that, I have only one request. Since you have worn this badge and enjoyed this honor, you must abide by the rules of this world." "What rules?" Gil Chong narrowed his eyes. Fury took a document from his pocket and handed it over. "This is the Avengers Code of Conduct. There are many clauses in it, but there are only two core ones. First, Before any large-scale operation, you must notify S.H.I.E.L.D. Second, Fury stared intently at Gil Chang's eyes and said word by word. If you can avoid killing, don't kill. I know you have the ability to turn enemies into ash, but we are law enforcers, not executioners. If you burn every criminal to ash, it will be very difficult for me to explain to the Security Council. It will even cause public panic. Subdue, understand, we want them subdued. Gil Chang took the document, didn't even glance at it, and tossed it onto the table to the side. Is that it? He smiled disdainfully. No problem. Gil Chang agreed quickly. I am the most law-abiding person. As long as those criminals behave, I am of course happy to send them to prison. But if I encounter those heinous, irredeemable scumbags, then I won't be able to control my eyes. At that time, don't blame me for not giving you a heads up. Fury gave him a deep look. If that happens, you'd better report it to me in advance, so I can have the PR department prepare the drafts. Okay. Gil Chang made a gesture, looking relaxed. Anything else? If not, I'm going back. The beauties over there are waiting for me to save them. Fury shook his head. Nothing else. See you then. Gil Chang turned and left, not even taking the document. Watching the dashing retreating figure, Fury let out a long sigh. He felt his headache getting worse. This guy, he agreed nicely enough. But that nonchalant attitude was practically writing, I don't care about you, on his face. I hope you don't cause any big trouble that I can't clean up. Fury rubbed his temples. He felt that his job as director was becoming more and more stifling. This night was destined to be a sleepless one. But for Gil Chang, this was an extremely pleasant night. Fine wine, music, and the next morning, sunlight spilled through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows into the luxurious master bedroom. The large velvet bed was a mess. Gil Chang opened his eyes and stretched lazily. His bones made a popping sound. This is the physique of a Kryptonian, even after 300 rounds last night. He was still full of energy the next day, feeling like he could go another round. He glanced to his side. Two blonde beauties were curled up in the quilt, sleeping soundly, with faint red marks on their exposed fair skin. Hey, the physique of mortals. Gil Chang shook his head, looking proud. Just then, Mr. Gil Chang. The invisible speakers in the room suddenly broadcasted Jarvis's voice, which gave Gil Chang a start. Although I really don't want to disturb your rest, but Mr. Stark asked me to remind you. There is only half an hour left until the press conference S.H.I.E.L.D. has prepared for you. If you don't want to be late, I suggest you get up now. Also, Ms. Potts is waiting outside the door. Holy shit, Gil Chang sat up abruptly. The press conference. That was a great opportunity for him to reap popularity points across the US. If he was late, how many popularity points would he lose? Why didn't anyone wake me up earlier? Gil Chang instantly sprang up from the bed, putting on the suit he didn't know where he had thrown last night at a speed incomprehensible to ordinary people. Before leaving, he glanced at the two beauties still sleeping on the bed. He leaned down and kissed them gently on their foreheads. Goodbye, sweethearts. Homelander is going to save the world. Gil Chang pushed open the door, and Pepper was already waiting in the hallway. She held a tablet in her hand, rapidly processing the mountain of emails from Stark Industries. Hearing the door open, Pepper looked up and flashed a professional smile. Good morning, Mr. Gil Chang. Tony is already waiting for you in the garage, and his patience, well, you know how it is. Gil Chang shrugged and straightened the slightly wrinkled collar of his suit. That wealthy jerk is always so impatient. Let's go, let us save the world, or rather, let us save that press conference. The two walked all the way to the underground garage. Tony was sitting in his flashy Audi R8 convertible, wearing sunglasses, his fingers tapping impatiently on the steering wheel. Seeing Gil Chang sauntering over, Tony took off his sunglasses and rolled his eyes. Whoa, look who it is. Has our sleeping beauty finally woken up? Tony pointed to the priceless Patek Philippe on his wrist. Do you have any idea what time it is? The press conference starts in 20 minutes, and we are still half a Manhattan away from the Plaza Hotel. Get into that Apollo. Your new uniform is already waiting for you over there. Gil Chang yawned, looking completely indifferent. What's the rush? The protagonist always arrives last, doesn't he? Although he said that, he still pulled open the door of the golden Apollo next to him and got in. The feeling of being enveloped by the leather seats was still as comfortable as ever. Just then, Pepper handed over a thick document. "Director Nick Fury asked me to pass this on to you." Pepper's expression was somewhat subtle. He said this is the Avengers Code of Conduct, and insisted that you read it before the press conference begins. Especially the chapter on maintaining public image. Gil Chong took the document, not even bothering to open the cover. Code of Conduct. He scoffed and carelessly tossed the thick document onto the passenger's side floor mat. "This paper is too stiff even for wiping my ass. Save it for that one-eyed dragon to read himself. My rules are the rules." Vroom. The engine roared. The golden supercar shot out like an arrow from a string, following closely behind Tony's Audi. Half an hour later, Manhattan, Plaza Hotel. The hotel entrance was already packed solid. Cameras with long and short lenses filled the entire square, and reporters from all over the world were fighting tooth and nail to secure a good spot. On the perimeter, tens of thousands of fanatical fans had gathered. They held signs printed with Homelander and Superman chanting slogans. The time for the press conference had arrived. But Homelander, the protagonist, was nowhere to be seen. To prevent the situation from spiraling out of control, S.H.I.E.L.D. had no choice but to push that centenarian out. On stage, Captain America Steve Rogers, wearing that classic blue, white, and red uniform, stood before the microphone with a righteous expression. Ahem. Captain America cleared his throat, his resolute face filled with sincerity. The victory in the Battle of New York is not just the victory of the Avengers. It is the victory of all humanity uniting as one to fight against a common enemy. We have proven that as long as we hold justice in our hearts, even an alien legion cannot break our will. A burst of enthusiastic applause and cheers erupted from the audience. It must be said that Captain America is truly professional when it comes to inspiring people. Fortunately, he was busy helping S.H.I.E.L.D. clear post-war debris yesterday and didn't attend the party. Otherwise, there wouldn't even be anyone on stage today who could speak. Just as Captain America was still on stage delivering a speech about freedom and courage. Backstage entrance. 2 luxury cars screeched to a halt, stopping steadily. Tony and Gil Chong pushed open their doors and got out. Nick Fury, who had been waiting for a long time, walked up with a dark expression. That single eye stared fixedly at Gil Chong, as if he wanted to eat him alive. "You guys finally made it," Fury roared in a low voice. 5 more minutes and this press conference would have turned into Captain America's personal talk show. Do you have any idea how many eyes are watching from outside right now? Tony took off his sunglasses and pointed innocently at Gil Chong next to him. "Don't look at me, blame this guy for sleeping in. You know how it is, young people always have a rich nightlife." Gil Chong straightened his suit, showing not a hint of apology, and instead turned the tables. "How is this my fault? If you had let me fly over directly, I would have arrived long ago." It was this Tin Man who insisted on driving, talking about enjoying the pleasure of driving. And what happened? Why didn't he talk about pleasure when we were stuck on the Brooklyn Bridge? Tony rolled his eyes, too lazy to argue with this unreasonable guy. All right, hurry up and go change." Fury waved his hand impatiently and summoned a few staff members. "Take him to the dressing room. Make it quick." Surrounded by staff, Gil Chong arrived at his exclusive dressing room. As soon as he entered, he saw that brand new uniform hanging in the center of the room. It was the one Tony had Jarvis rush to make overnight. A deep blue high polymer material bodysuit, with a faint metallic luster flowing across its surface. On the shoulders were pure gold eagle epaulettes, shining brilliantly under the lights. The huge golden A on the chest was even more imposing. And what satisfied Gil Chong the most was the long red cape printed with the stars and stripes pattern. Tisk tisk tisk. Gil Chong reached out and stroked the cool texture of the battle suit, unable to hide the fanaticism in his eyes. Now that's right. This is the kind of style Homelander should have. Compared to the slightly cheap-looking original uniform, this set produced by Tony was top tier in both material and design. Without any hesitation, Gil Chong took off his suit and put on the battle suit. The moment he was fully dressed and stood in front of the full-length mirror, His entire aura changed instantly. He was no longer the refined scumbag in a suit, but a true god among men. Man of Steel, plus Homelander. Perfect. Gil Chong looked at himself in the mirror, his lips curling into an extremely confident smile. Pushing open the dressing room door, Gil Chong strode toward the makeup room. Although he didn't need makeup given his skin condition, going through the motions was still necessary. However, the moment he pushed open the door to the makeup room, the female makeup artists who had been chatting away instantly fell silent. SS's. Immediately after, there was a collective gasp of air. Those makeup artists, who were used to seeing big stars and celebrities, all covered their mouths, their eyes wide open. So handsome, so oppressive, that overwhelming aura of masculinity was enough to make one's legs go weak. Detected extreme shock and admiration from the makeup artists, popularity points plus 100. Gil Chong enjoyed this kind of attention. He walked straight to the makeup mirror and sat down. Looking at the dazzling blonde hair in the mirror, and the two arrogant and confident golden eagle heads on his shoulders, he tilted his head slightly and flashed a friendly smile at himself in the mirror. This is the real Homelander. John Gilchang slowly stood up from the chair in the dressing room. He faced the mirror, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. This level should be enough to make that crowd outside go crazy, right? Gil Chong straightened the heavy red cape behind him, printed with the stars and stripes pattern. The cape draped to the floor, swaying slightly with his movements, every fold exuded the fragrance of a savior. He stepped toward the backstage lounge. Nick Fury, who was waiting somewhat anxiously, heard the footsteps and subconsciously turned his head. In that instant, the king of agents, who wouldn't even blink in the face of the god of death, had his single eye constrict strangely. His lips parted slightly, and the words he originally wanted to use to urge him along got stuck in his throat. He just stared blankly at the Gil Chong who walked out. The black braised egg was frantically greeting God in his heart. Fury cursed in a low voice. Wow. Beside him, Tony Stark let out a loud whistle, and his legs, which were originally resting on the armrest, were suddenly pulled back. Tony circled Gil Chong twice, his eyes filled with self-indulgent amazement. Jarvis, did you see that? This is what you call a genius's aesthetic. I knew it. Stark Industries tailoring combined with my design inspiration, only this level of handsomeness is worthy of my major shareholder. Pride flickered in Tony's caramel-colored eyes. Ding. Detected Nick Fury is extremely shocked, popularity points plus 100. Ding. Detected Tony Stark's narcissism has exploded, popularity points plus 100. Ding. Everyone backstage has been struck by the dimensionality-reducing blow of his looks, popularity points plus 100. Plus 100. Hearing the notifications chiming in his mind, the smile on Gil Chang's face became increasingly benevolent. He nodded slightly to Tony. Thanks, Tony. Your craftsmanship is indeed good. All right, since the protagonist has arrived. Nick Fury forcibly regained his aura as the director. Captain, you can end that boring old man's speech. The stage is his now. Meanwhile, at the front stage, Steve Rogers was somewhat awkwardly adjusting the height of the microphone. To be honest, if he were asked to charge with his shield, he wouldn't even blink. But making him chatter in front of these flashing lights made him feel like an outdated theater actor. Fury's instructions came through the earpiece. Captain America felt relieved. He took a deep breath, and his resolute voice spread across the square. Everyone, in that desperate battle yesterday, you must have seen a stream of light tearing through the darkness. Some say he is a god, others say he is Superman. But today, he has a name that belongs to this land, and to every one of you. Captain America stepped aside, elegantly gesturing toward the backstage exit with his right hand, his tone solemn and passionate. Let us welcome the Guardian of New York, Homelander. The entire hotel square erupted. The wave of screams was almost enough to lift the roof off the hotel. Tens of thousands of people pushed frantically against the police lines, and countless phones and cameras all locked onto that exit at this moment. Gil Chong stepped out. At that moment, the sunlight seemed to have a spirit of its own, plaiting a sacred border onto his golden hair. The heavy cape billowed backward under the airflow, the stars and stripes pattern snapping in the Manhattan wind. He slowly walked onto the stage. Every step on the red carpet felt like stepping on the heartstrings of his followers. In the press section below the stage, a white-haired woman wearing a black slip dress with an incredibly hot body was nonchalantly shaking the admission ticket in her hand. She was Felicia Hardy, the most dangerous and charming little cat in this jungle. Originally, she had only come to scout out a few unlucky rich guys to see if she could swipe a few large diamond rings. But when that figure appeared in her field of vision, the admission ticket in Felicia's hand dropped with a snap next to her high heels. Her wild eyes widened, and her heart felt as if it had been struck hard. My God, this man, Felicia murmured to herself, her tongue subconsciously pressing against the roof of the mouth. She had seen countless handsome faces, but she had never seen such a domineering beauty, so full of dominance. That sun-like gentleness made the blood throughout her body scream. Ding! Detected Felicia Hardy is extremely moved, providing high-quality popularity points plus 200. Gil Chang's sharp gaze swept through the crowd. Felicia, black cat. Tisk, this little wild cat's gaze is certainly fervent enough. He quietly withdrew his gaze and walked to the center of the podium. Captain America looked at the approaching Gil Chang, felt the overwhelming pressure, and subconsciously handed over the microphone. At this moment, he suddenly had an illusion. In front of this man, his own uniform, which represented the honor of the old era, actually seemed a bit faded. The Homelander before him seemed more like the incarnation of a nation than he did. Gil Chang took the microphone but didn't speak immediately. He just stood there, facing the tens of thousands of people, and gave that most lethal smile. The originally noisy screams of the crowd miraculously quieted down quickly under the sweep of his single gaze. This was a pure and ultimate idol charisma. Good morning, New York. Gil Chang's voice echoed in everyone's ears through the amplification equipment, gentle yet magnetic. I know that everyone experienced an unprecedented nightmare yesterday. He looked down at his palm, a hint of faint sadness in his tone. That acting was enough to sweep the Oscars. Many people asked me, Homelander, why did you fly into space while stepping on a nuclear bomb? Was it worth it? Weren't you afraid of death? The crowd below held their breath. Gil Chang raised his head slightly, the stars and stripes cape spreading behind him, his gaze becoming incredibly deep and firm. I want to tell you. I didn't do it to receive applause here, nor to show how powerful I am. I did it simply because behind me is my home, my motherland, and you, the most lovely people on this land. I once swore that as long as I, Homelander, am still flying, the dignity of this land will not be trampled upon. Your safety is the only meaning of my existence. He suddenly clenched his fist, the golden eagle head epaulets gleaming in the sun. Some call me a hero, but I prefer you to see me as your family. I will always, always put the American people first in my heart. A mountain-shaking roar of cheers instantly exploded. Homelander, Homelander. Those citizens who were still worried about post-war reconstruction were now frantically waving their arms. Some shouted through tears, while others knelt on the ground in prayer. Ding! Popularity points plus 1000, plus 2000, plus 5000. Popularity points are skyrocketing. As Gil Chang watched his popularity points soar, the sense of satisfaction almost made it impossible for him to maintain the smile on his face. Yes, that's it. Have blind faith in me, worship me. The more fanatical you are, the more invincible I become. Just then, Tony Stark, dressed in casual clothes and holding a microphone, strode over to Gil Chang's side. Tony looked at the crowd below who were about to go crazy and provocatively winked in the direction where Nick Fury was. He put his arm around Gil Chang's shoulder, though it was a bit of a struggle due to the height difference. He announced loudly to all the cameras. Since everyone is so enthusiastic, I'll strike while the iron is hot and announce something. Tony pointed to the shiny golden A on Gil Chang's chest. John Gil Chang, also known as your Homelander, from today onwards, officially becomes a core member of the Avengers. Together, we will fight to the end to defend this planet and to defend America. The whole place erupted again. The flashing lights merged into a vast white ocean. Gil Chang's face, with its perfect smile, was completely frozen as the cover of Time magazine. Standing in the crowd, Felicia Hardy pushed forward with force, her cheeks flushed, and her eyes staring obsessively at the man on the stage. Homelander joining the Avengers, she quietly calculated in her heart. It seems necessary to pay a visit to this handsome blonde guy. God bless America. After uttering this highly inflammatory closing remark, Gil Chong did not spare another glance for the almost frenzied believers below the stage. He nodded slightly and, amidst the thunderous applause and screams, turned and walked towards the backstage. His steps were steady, his cape swaying, leaving behind a majestic and mysterious silhouette for the world. Gil Chong knew very well. As a superhero, especially one with more divinity than humanity like him, it was crucial to understand the art of leaving things unsaid. If he were to linger on stage, babbling like a third-rate internet celebrity, interacting endlessly with fans, his prestige would instantly plummet. Mystery was the best preservative for maintaining high popularity points. After all, what the public worshipped was the flawless Homelander he spoke of, representing the purest will of America. Not a John Gilchang who liked beautiful women, was keen on making money, and was even a bit petty. As long as this facade wasn't broken, he was the faith of this world. He was the only true God. As soon as he entered the backstage lounge, the clamor was blocked by the heavy soundproof door. Clap, clap, clap. Tony Stark leaned against the dressing table, clapping and whistling, a signature playful smile on his face. Brilliant, truly brilliant. Tony walked over, sizing up Gil Chong as if seeing him for the first time. Honestly, major shareholder, I think you should run for president. Based on that speech just now, the emotion, the rhythm of the pauses, it would be a loss to America's political scene if you didn't sit in that chair in the White House. I even want to cast a vote for you. Although Nick Fury still wore his usual poker face, a complex look flashed in his single eye. As the king of agents, he had seen too many inspiring orators. But someone like Gil Chong, who had both absolute power to back him up and such terrifying charisma. He was the first. Though I really don't want to admit it, Fury said in a low voice, crossing his arms. But when it comes to stirring public emotions, you are indeed a genius. Gil Chong unbuttoned a button on his collar, and the divine radiance instantly receded a bit. Keep it low-key, low-key. He waved his hand and picked up a bottle of water from the table. Without twisting the cap, a light flick of his thumb sent the bottle cap flying. I just said what they wanted to hear, in a way they liked. That's called user thinking, understand, Director Fury. Just then, Steve Rogers, who had been silently standing in the corner, walked over. This former symbol of American spirit now looked at Gil Chong with an indescribable sense of approval and a hint of frustration. John, Captain America looked at him sincerely. What you said just now was really good. About home, about protection, about responsibility. Honestly, even the me of back then, in such an occasion, probably couldn't have moved people's hearts like you did. I feel that today's young people are indeed stronger than us. Gil Chong looked at this sincere old-fashioned man, feeling not the slightest guilt, but rather more inclined to smile. This honest kid, if he knew that Gil Chong was thinking about how to harvest these leaks more thoroughly, Captain America would probably smash his shield on the spot. But on the surface, Gil Chong still showed a humble and respectful expression. He reached out and gently patted the crimson stars and stripes cape behind him. No, Captain, you flatter me. Gil Chong looked righteous, his eyes as clear as a college student's. How could I have any talent for public speaking? I rely on it. He pointed at the cape, his voice low and emotional. It's America. It's the spirit of this land, the freedom and indomitable will flowing in our blood, that makes me want to shout out. All of this is my sincere heart, without any tricks, purely emotion. Steve Rogers, looking at Gil Chang's, I am proud of this expression. Captain America opened his mouth, and finally, 1,000 words condensed into a sigh. Well said. He heavily patted Gil Chang's shoulder, his eyes full of gratification. This is the Captain America of the new era. This level of awareness is unmatched. Gil Chong subtly accepted the pat, secretly pleased. This move not only harvested popularity points from the public but also maxed out the Avengers' favorability towards him. Killing two birds with one stone, a complete win. Alright, since the press conference is over, I should be going too. Gil Chong didn't want to waste any more time with these big guys. He adjusted his cape and waved to everyone. See you all later. If you encounter any aliens you can't handle, or particularly ugly monsters, remember to call my name. Done. He walked to the outdoor exit backstage. The sun shone on him, and the golden eagle head epaulets gleamed. Under the gaze of Tony, Fury, and Captain America. Boom! Without any run-up, without any warning. The concrete beneath Gil Chang's feet suddenly cracked into a spiderweb of fissures. Immediately after, a deafening roar instantly erupted. Bang! 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 The air was instantly torn apart. Only an afterimage remained on everyone's retinas. And high above, 3 visible mock rings burst open, instantly breaking 3 times the speed of sound. A fierce wind rushed into the backstage, messing up Tony's hair into a bird's nest and making Fury's trench coat flap wildly. What the? Tony took off his sunglasses, looking at the lingering cloud rings in the sky, his mouth twitching uncontrollably. He just took off. Without even a warm-up, Nick Fury's single eye also narrowed into a slit. This was the first time he had experienced such a close-up shock from pure physical power. No technological assistance, just tearing through the sound barrier with sheer body strength. Can such a monster truly be controlled? Above Manhattan, Gil Chang enjoyed the exhilaration of the cold wind whipping his face at high altitude. Ding! Detected deep shock from all Avengers members, popularity points plus 500. Ding! Detected New York citizens witnessing the mock rings, worship value skyrockets, popularity points plus 2000. Listening to the system's prompts, Gil Chang was in a great mood. A few minutes later, he landed on the ruins of his top-floor apartment, which now looked like it had suffered Syrian war damage. It was noon, and the sun was scorching, but he felt warm all over, as if he had endless energy. Drip. His phone rang in his pocket. Gil Chang took it out and saw a bank transfer SMS. Your account received a transfer at 12:05 p.m., $200 million. Memo. All-American Mutual Insurance claim. Hey, Gil Chang sneered, looking at the long string of zeros. These spineless fools. They only know how to write a check when Tony's legal team has a knife to their throats. Force majeure. In the face of capital and fists, there's no such thing as force majeure. He casually put his phone back in his pocket. With $200 million in hand, plus his previous savings and Stark Industries stock dividends, his current cash flow was frighteningly abundant. Since the house is destroyed, I'll just buy another one. Gil Chang surveyed the surrounding ruins, shaking his head in distaste. But the feng shui here isn't good. This time I need to find a flashier, higher place. Before that, I'll just make do in a 5-star hotel for a few days. The presidential suite should be fine too. Just as he was about to set off to find a Michelin 3-star restaurant to reward his craving stomach. Gil Chang's ears twitched slightly. Super hearing instantly picked up a discordant clamor. He walked to the edge of the ruins and looked down. Through layers of architectural obstruction, supervision instantly locked onto a main road a few blocks away. There, a scene like a Hollywood blockbuster was unfolding. A heavy armored cash transport truck was rampaging through the streets like a mad wild bull. Inside the cab, several masked robbers were holding submachine guns, frantically firing at the police cars in hot pursuit. Tat 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 tat, gunshots, siren wails, and pedestrians' screams blended into a cacophony. And the out-of-control truck, due to excessive speed, skidded violently while crossing an intersection. Its massive body tilted sideways, with a screech of brakes, heading straight for the sidewalk. And in that direction, 2 young women, fashionably dressed and carrying shopping bags, were terrified, their legs turning to jelly, completely unable to escape. Watching as the multi-ton steel behemoth was about to crush them into pulp. Gil Chang, standing 100 meters high, a slight smile played on his lips. Pre-dinner dessert has arrived. This cliché, hero saves the beauty, plot might be tacky, but those 2 popularity points babies are quite good looking, aren't they? Boom. The next second, the figure that had been standing at the edge of the ruins instantly vanished. Only a circle of explosive air ripples remained, slowly spreading at the original spot. The 2 fashionable young women were completely terrified. A huge shadow loomed over them, rushing straight at their faces. In front of the several-ton steel beast, their slender legs couldn't move an inch. They could only hug each other in despair, letting out piercing screams. Ah, it was over. This was the only thought in their minds. However, just 1 millisecond before the massive bumper was about to touch their noses, Boom! A dull, extremely loud bang rang out. The anticipated severe pain and shattering of bones did not arrive. The strong wind messed up their carefully styled hair, but the crazy truck. It was as if it had hit an unshakable mountain, instantly coming to a halt. That's right, it was an instant stop. Without any buffer. The enormous inertia caused the truck's rear compartment to violently lift up, then fall back down heavily. The front of the truck, due to the terrifying impact, was directly caved in, crushed into a mass of scrap metal. The hood flew off, the radiator burst, and white steam instantly filled the air. The two women trembled as they opened their eyes. Through the hazy steam, they saw a tall, incredibly imposing figure from behind. A dark blue combat suit, golden eagle head epaulets, and a bright red cape, emblazoned with the stars and stripes, slowly fluttering in the steam. He stood there, one hand pressed against the deformed truck front, without even retreating half an inch. Effortlessly, as if he had just stopped a toy car. What happened? In the driver's cab, the robber wearing a Joker mask was thrown around by the sudden stop, his forehead covered in blood. He shook his head, looking at the blurry figure outside the windshield, and the fierce glint in his eyes instantly erupted. Someone's blocking the way. Kill him. Quickly, kill him. These desperate criminals didn't care about much else. Under the stimulation of adrenaline, their minds were filled only with slaughter and escape. The robbers in the back immediately poked their heads out of the deformed compartment, raising their automatic rifles, and unleashed a barrage of insane gunfire at the blue figure. Da 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 da. Flames spewed, and dense bullets poured out like rain. At this range, with this firepower, even a SWAT officer in a bulletproof vest would be riddled with holes. No, the two women behind them covered their mouths in terror. However, the next second, a scene that made all the robbers doubt their lives appeared. Clang, clang, clang. Those rifle bullets, capable of penetrating steel plates, struck the man's body and actually made crisp metallic sounds. Sparks flew. The deformed bullet heads fell weakly to the ground, making crackling sounds. And the man, let alone bleeding. He didn't even have a single small hole in his blue combat suit. He reached out and elegantly brushed his shoulder, as if flicking away some insignificant dust. As the steam gradually dissipated, the sunlight once again shone on that excessively handsome face. That iconic smile, full of oppression and divinity, came into the eyes of all the robbers. That's the robber boss in the driver's cab's pupils suddenly constricted to pinpricks. His gun clattered onto his lap. He recognized him. Just this morning, at that nationally televised press conference. And that figure who tore apart an alien warship yesterday. Ho, Homelander. The robber's voice instantly cracked, filled with endless fear and despair. How is this possible? We're just robbing an armored car. Why send Homelander? This was like stealing a manhole cover on the side of the road and then being targeted by an intercontinental missile. This was too exaggerated. Run. Several robbers were so scared they soiled themselves, abandoning the money, pushing open the car doors, and trying to run in the opposite direction. Fight a monster like this? Were they tired of reincarnating too slowly? Gil Chong looked at these scurrying ants, a playful sneer curling at the corner of his mouth. Run, causing trouble on my turf, and you still want to run? Did you ask for my permission? But he didn't immediately give chase. As a professional superhero, he knew what was most important. Gil Chong slowly turned around. He ignored the fleeing robbers behind him. Instead, he faced the two young women who were still stunned. He subtly straightened his slightly disheveled cape. A warm smile, capable of making any woman's hormones surge, appeared on his face. Ladies, Gil Chang's voice was magnetic and gentle, a stark contrast to his previous tough, man of steel image. Are you hurt? He even reached out, very gentlemanly, and helped one of the women who had fallen to the ground back up. And no, the woman felt like she was about to faint. Looking at his face up close, the intense masculine aura made her legs weak. That's good. Gil Chong nodded in satisfaction, striking an incredibly handsome pose for the two of them. He pointed to the golden A on his chest, then to the sky above. Don't worry, and don't be afraid. Because I am here. As long as I am here, no evil can harm you. This is the sense of security Homelander brings you. After speaking, he even gave them a playful wink. Ah ah ah. The two women finally reacted, letting out screams even more shrill than when they encountered the car crash. It was excitement, exhilaration, a fanaticism like witnessing a miracle. Homelander. Homelander saved us. He's a million times more handsome than on TV. Ding. Detected extreme adoration and admiration. Popularity points plus 200. Ding. Popularity points plus 200. Listening to the pleasant notification sound, Gil Chong was thoroughly satisfied. This was what he wanted. As for those robbers, alright, showtime's over. Now it's time to clean up the trash. Gil Chong turned around, looking at the robbers who had already run dozens of meters away, his eyes instantly turning cold. Whoosh! His figure instantly vanished from the spot. There was no need to use heat vision, that would be too wasteful, and a bloody mess would also affect the city's appearance. Gil Chong was like a white flash of lightning, instantly appearing behind the robbers. Bang, 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 like swatting a few flies. Gil Chong didn't even exert himself, just casually slapped them a few times. Ah, my leg, accompanied by several screams and the crisp sound of bones breaking. Those robbers, who had been incredibly arrogant moments before, flew out like kites with broken strings. They fell heavily to the ground, either with broken arms or broken legs, unable to get up again. Completely losing the ability to resist. At this moment, the police cars, which had been left far behind, finally arrived belatedly. The police officers jumped out of their cars, rushing over with their guns raised, only to find that the battle was already over. The legendary man was holding the robber boss by his collar with one hand, tossing him onto the hood of a police car like a little chicken. These pieces of trash are yours, officer. Gil Chong clapped his hands, smiling at the dumbfounded police officers. Remember to find them a sturdy cage, don't let them out to scare pretty ladies again. Yes, yes, officer. The leading officer was so excited he was incoherent, even subconsciously saluting. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Is this your power? It's simply incredible. The surrounding onlookers also erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. Homelander, Homelander. Gil Chong basked in the cheers, his smile growing brighter. He waved his hand, his red cape fluttering in the wind. You don't need to thank me. This is my reason for existence, isn't it? For New York, for America. Ding. Detected gratitude and adoration from all New York Police Department members, popularity points plus 1500. Ding. Detected fervent faith from onlookers, popularity points plus 3000. Another big harvest. Gil Chong was ecstatic. This feeling of effortlessly accumulating large amounts of popularity points was simply addictive. Alright, everyone. Gil Chong looked at the growing crowd, knowing that staying any longer would cause a traffic jam. Too much is as bad as too little. Maintaining a sense of mystery was also very important. I have to go, there are more people waiting for my help. With that said, under everyone's gaze, he slightly bent his knees. Boom. Accompanied by a sonic boom, he shot up into the sky, soaring into the clouds. Leaving behind only a ground full of upward gazes. 10,000 meters above the ground. Clouds rapidly swept past beneath his feet. Gil Chong wasn't in a hurry to find the next victim. Instead, he floated in the stratosphere, happily opening the system panel. Adding the accumulation from the Battle of New York and the recent harvest from saving the damsels in distress. The number on the system panel had become an extremely tempting astronomical figure. Host: John Gilchang. Current popularity points: 502,300. Reputation level: renown: 500,000. Gil Chong looked at the number, unable to resist licking his lips. This excited him even more than a string of zeros in a bank account. Because this meant, ding, congratulations to the host on increasing their reputation level. Received phase reward: Stellar Energy Tolerance Enhancement one time. Triggered Advanced Quest: Baptism of the Sun. Quest description: as the owner of a Kryptonian body, the sun is your source of power. Since you already have the ability to fly into space, why not take a bath in that big fireball? Quest requirement: enter the sun's core region and charge for 4 months. Quest reward: Silver Body Elementary. Looking at the quest description, Gil Chang's eyes instantly lit up frighteningly. Bathe in the sun. Was this fast-forwarding directly to the version where Superman meditates in the sun for decades? One must know, while the Man of Steel was strong, in a place like the Marvel Universe where gods fought, he was at most a planetary overlord. Against someone of Thanos' level, or someone with the Infinity Gauntlet, he would still need to be cautious. But, if it were the Silver Body, that was a terrifying existence capable of pushing planets and blowing out the sun with a single breath. Stellar energy tolerance enhancement. Gil Chong clenched his fists, feeling the special energy within him, which had appeared due to the system reward. This was practically an umbrella prepared to allow him to safely enter the sun. The system was forcing him onto the path of invincibility. Although it would take 4 months, it was absolutely worth it. Since that's the case, Gil Chong looked up, through the thin atmosphere, at the scorching sun hanging high above. That was no longer a burning fireball. That was his power bank. That was his source of power. Then what are we waiting for? Gil Chang's lips curved into a fervent smile, and his bioelectric field suddenly erupted. Boom! A sonic boom that echoed across the sky exploded in the stratosphere. Gil Chong transformed into a golden stream of light, breaking free from Earth's gravitational pull. He charged resolutely towards the sun, burning with raging flames. In the vast, boundless space, without air resistance, unbound by gravity, Gil Chong felt like a fish returning to the sea, every cell in his body cheering with joy. This is the feeling of freedom. He looked back. The blue planet now appeared as small as a blue glass bead in his vision. Gil Chong silently calculated in his mind. The current speed is Mach 150, which is about 51 kilometers per second. The distance from the Earth to the Sun is about 150 million kilometers. Upon calculating, Gil Chang's brows furrowed slightly. 33 days. A one-way trip takes a month. That's too slow. Although he was already fast on Earth, this was interstellar travel. This speed, on a cosmic scale, was no different from a snail's crawl. 1 month to go, another month to come back. Plus, the system task requires me to stay in that sauna-like environment at the sun's core for at least 4 months to complete the transformation and activate the silver body. Gil Chong counted on his fingers. This trip will take at least half a year. Half a year. Gil Chang's eyes suddenly lit up. It was summer 2012, shortly after the Battle of New York. If he pushed it back half a year, wouldn't that be Christmas 2012? Let me think. At that time, wasn't it the beginning of the Iron Man 3 feet plot? He remembered it clearly. At that time, Tony Stark would be so anxious from PTSD after the Battle of New York that he couldn't sleep. Then, a perverted scientist named Killian would lead a group of self-detonating red worm zombies to blow up that large seaside villa into rubble. Not only that, even the U.S. president was kidnapped and hung in midair like cured meat. It was simply the most shameful day in the history of America. Tisk tisk tisk. The president kidnapped, the whole nation in panic. How many popularity points would that be? If at that time, I, Homelander, who had disappeared for half a year, suddenly made a triumphant return. Punching the villain to smithereens, catching the president's private jet with one hand. That scene, that spectacle. Gil Chang's blood boiled just thinking about it. Absolutely perfect. This business trip was worth it. He could upgrade his cheat, and also return just in time to harvest a huge wave of popularity points. This was a massive win. Thinking of this, Gil Chong suddenly realized again. After obtaining the silver body, he should be able to fly at the speed of light, right? That way, he would reach the Earth in 8 minutes. But it didn't matter, if he could really fly at the speed of light. He wouldn't mind soaking in the sun for another month. Then, he no longer hesitated. Bioelectric field fully activated. Boom. Although there was no sound in space, the surrounding space seemed to vibrate. His speed surged again, and he sprinted at full speed towards that distant star, emitting endless light and heat. However, just as he flew past the moon's orbit, buzz. A strange ripple, without any warning, spread deep within his mind. Immediately after, a gentle, calm, yet slightly helpless female voice directly echoed in his cerebral cortex. John Gilchang, where are you going? Are you in such a hurry to leave Earth that you didn't even say goodbye? Z's. Gil Chong, who was flying at high speed, suddenly slammed on the brakes. Inertia made him tumble several times in space before he stopped. He vigilantly scanned his surroundings, his eyes instantly glowing red, heat vision ready to unleash. The dark universe. Aside from the distant starlight, there wasn't even a ghost of a shadow. Who's talking to me? Gil Chong was a little freaked out. This was space, for crying out loud. A vacuum environment. Where was that voice coming from? It's me. The voice sounded again, even with a hint of a smile. Ancient One. Ancient One. Gil Chang's eyes widened, a look of disbelief on his face. That bald, sorcerer. Where are you? Why can't I see you? His supervision was activated to the extreme, scanning hundreds of kilometers of surrounding space with X-ray, telescopic, and microscopic vision. Let alone a person, there wasn't even a meteorite. I'm still drinking tea in Kamar Taj. The Ancient One's voice remained unhurried. There is a magic barrier constructed by the three sanctums around the earth. Any individual with powerful energy entering or exiting, I can sense it. You made such a big commotion breaking through the barrier, it would be hard for me to pretend I didn't know. But then again, the Ancient One's voice carried a hint of surprise. Although I know your physique is special, this is still physically traversing the void. You just flew out like that, without any protection. Your physiological functions are truly beyond my expectation. Hearing this, Gil Chong rolled his eyes. He stood with his hands on his hips, floating in space, and complained to the void. That's it, sorcerer, are you underestimating me a bit too much? For most carbon-based life forms in this universe, surviving in a vacuum is indeed quite difficult. But for a god among men like me, Gil Chong spread his hands, a Versailles-like expression on his face. It's just a piece of cake. More than that, what I'm more curious about is, what kind of sorcery is this? I've flown hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and you can still chat with me. This is too much of a privacy invasion. This is not sorcery, but an advanced application of astral projection and telepathy. The Ancient One patiently explained. I am currently in a soul state, connected to your mind. You can't see me because your third eye hasn't opened yet, and your perception of the magical dimension is not enough. Gil Chang's mouth twitched as he listened. Soul state. Connecting to my mind. Isn't that just seeing a ghost? Gil Chong couldn't help but curse in his heart. Sorcerer, can you please not do this horror movie plot in broad daylight? Even though I'm Homelander, I still have nightmares. Far away in the Himalayas, the Ancient One's hand, holding a teacup, trembled slightly. She shook her head helplessly. This disciple, his talent was good, but his mouth was too annoying. All right, let's skip this topic. The Ancient One asked seriously. You're leaving Earth in such a hurry, even skipping your weekly magic class. What are you going to do? Could it be that a new dimensional demon has invaded? In the Ancient One's understanding, a strong individual of Gil Chang's caliber suddenly leaving surely meant something big was happening. However, Gil Chang's answer almost made her spit out her tea. Nothing major. Gil Chang pointed to the dazzling fireball in the distance, and said with a relaxed expression. I just feel a bit cold, and want to go over there for a bath. And get a tan while I'm at it. Bath, a bath. The Ancient One was stunned. Even as the Sorcerer Supreme, even with all her knowledge. At this moment, she couldn't quite keep up with Gil Chang's thought process. Are you saying, the sun? You're going to bathe in the sun? Are you sure you haven't gone mad? That was a star. Its core temperature reached 15 million degrees Celsius. Even Odin of Asgard wouldn't dare to say he could bathe in it in the flesh, would he? Of course not mad. Gil Chong was full of confidence. My physique is a bit special. The more I bask in the sun, the stronger I get. Recently, I've felt a bottleneck, so I need to get some supplies from the source. Don't worry, sorcerer, I'll be back soon, I won't die. The Ancient One was silent for a long time. She looked at the blurry future in the timeline and finally sighed. This guy was indeed a variable. Even his cultivation method was so hardcore. Then how long will you be gone? The Ancient One asked. Not long, just about half a year. Gil Chong said casually. I'll definitely be back in half a year. I'll bring you some sun specialties then, well, if there are any local specialties there. Half a year. The Ancient One's voice rose a few octaves. Are you kidding me? I just told you yesterday that you need to come to Kamartaj for class every week. You've only just learned to draw circles with your magic shield, and you want to skip class for half a year. This is called requesting leave. Do you understand requesting leave? Gil Chong retorted righteously. This is preparation for saving the world. Besides, sorcerer, I'm a smart person, I learn everything quickly. When I come back, I guarantee I'll memorize all your books in 3 days. As for now, Gil Chong glanced at the approaching sun, the craving from deep within his cells making him restless. Next time, I'm really in a hurry right now, the bathhouse is about to close. Ancient One. In the meditation room at Kamartaj. The Ancient One put down her teacup and rubbed her temples. She truly had no way to deal with this rogue. She couldn't hit him, and he wouldn't listen to scolding. All right then, the Ancient One conceded. Originally, I was thinking that since you can project your soul, even if you're in space, I could still give you online classes through astral projection, teaching you some meditation and mental defense techniques. But since you're going to an extreme environment like the sun, the Ancient One shook her head. It's filled with violent energy storms, even my mental power would struggle to maintain a stable connection there. It seems there's no other way. Then go ahead. However, John. The Ancient One's tone became more serious. Remember your promise. You must return in half a year. The Earth needs you. Relax, relax. Gil Chong waved his hand in space, looking carefree and happy. Don't worry, I'm Homelander, Earth is my home. Where else would I go if I didn't come back? Well, that's it, sorcerer. I'm leaving too, don't miss me too much. After saying that, Gil Chong cut off the feeling of mental connection, he just didn't want to listen anymore. He turned around, facing the giant, scorching star that emitted endless light. His eyes were filled with fanaticism and ambition. Goodbye, Earth. When Daddy comes back, I'll put on a big show for you all. Boom. The golden stream of light accelerated again, charging fearlessly into that ocean of light. Pitch black. Dead silent. This was the main theme of space. Gil Chong maintained the classic Superman flying pose. Boring. It's really boring. Gil Chong couldn't help but complain inwardly. Although his speed had reached an astonishing Mach 150, flying over 50 kilometers per second. This was incredibly fast on Earth. But on the vast scale of the universe, he felt like an ant paddling in the Pacific Ocean, the surrounding scenery barely changed. That unchanging darkness and silence, stretching across eons, was enough to drive an ordinary person mad. How many days has it been flying? There isn't even a car radio. I should have brought an iPad. Gil Chong sighed, bored, and flipped over, changing to a backstroke position. Since traveling was too boring, he might as well find some fun. Gil Chong directly activated his supervision and hearing. Buzz. As his senses extended infinitely, that blue planet, which he had already left behind, once again appeared clearly in his mind. This was the authority of a god among men. As long as he wished, there were no secrets on Earth. His gaze penetrated the atmosphere, passed through steel and concrete. It locked directly onto the top floor of Stark Tower, which had just begun repairs. Let me see what those guys are doing. Stark Tower, temporary office. Tony Stark was holding a glass of chlorophyll juice, holding the phone with a helpless expression. On the other end of the phone, Nick Fury's roaring voice, filled with questioning, came through. Stark, tell me where he is. It's been 24 hours. Satellites can't find him, thermal imaging can't find him, even that facial recognition system can't find him. A living person, and an obvious one wearing a star-spangled cape, just vanished into thin air. Fury was anxious. Ever since yesterday's press conference, Homelander had vanished as if he had evaporated from the Earth. This made his extremely controlling heart unbearable. Who could sleep with an uncontrolled nuclear weapon wandering around outside? Relax, buddy. Tony moved the phone away slightly and dug at his ear. I'm looking for him too. You know, he still owes me a celebration dinner. Besides, he can fly. You saw yesterday, he was gone in a flash. Maybe he went to the South Pole to see penguins. Or to Mars for his honeymoon. Tony. Fury's voice deepened. This is no time for jokes. All right, Tony shrugged, though Fury couldn't see it. He pondered for a moment and offered a seemingly reasonable suggestion. Do you remember that bald magician who opened the spark rings? Are you talking about the Himalayas? Bingo. Tony snapped his fingers, since she's the sorcerer supreme, and she took John away the day before yesterday. Maybe she knows something. After all, for magic matters, you still have to find a magician. Silence fell on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. I understand. Beep, beep. The call ended. ... In space. Gil Chong listened to this conversation, a playful smile curling at the corner of his mouth. These guys. I'm just going on a long trip, do they miss me that much? Especially that black braised egg, his desire for control is too strong, isn't it? Does he really think I'm one of his agents? Want to find me? Next lifetime. Gil Chong retracted his gaze and continued his boring flight in space. Time passed quickly. The next day, Gil Chong once again activated his supervision and hearing. This time, his gaze locked onto the Himalayas. He saw a dark Quinjet, braving the wind and snow, landing extremely arrogantly outside the ancient monastery of Kamar Taj. The hatch opened. Nick Fury, wrapped in a thick leather coat, walked down with a team of agents. At the entrance, Sorcerer Ancient One was still in a thin yellow robe, holding a folding fan, calmly looking at these uninvited guests. Director Fury, you've come a long way. I apologize for not greeting you properly. Sorcerer Ancient One. Fury didn't waste words and went straight to the point. Homelander, John Gilchang, is he here with you? Or is he learning those magic spells from you? Ancient One smiled slightly and shook her head. He is not here. He is just a passerby, this place cannot keep him. Fury's single eye was filled with disbelief. Not here. He was exchanging flirtatious glances with you the day before yesterday, and now he's not here. Are you kidding me? I need confirmation, Fury said forcefully. Please do. Ancient One turned sideways and made a please gesture, so generous that Fury was momentarily stunned. Kamar Taj has no secrets, except for truth. So, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, armed with various high-tech instruments, scanned the ancient monastery inside and out. Forget Homelander. They didn't even find a single golden hair. Half an hour later, Fury walked out with a dark expression, looked at the still calm Ancient One, and gritted his teeth. Apologies for the disturbance. With that, he took his people and scurried onto the plane, retreating. Ha 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 ha. In space, Gil Chong laughed so hard that tears almost came out. This black braised egg, his frustrated look is just too amusing. Keep looking, keep looking. If you can find me on Earth, I'll eat the sun in front of me right then and there. Gil Chong was in a great mood. In the following days, while traveling, he monitored every move on Earth like watching a TV series. S.H.I.E.L.D. was like a headless fly, scrambling all over the world. And besides S.H.I.E.L.D., Gil Chong also turned his gaze to another dark corner. Somewhere in the Middle East, in a dimly lit room, an old man in a long robe, wearing rings on all his fingers, and with a long beard, was facing the camera, delivering a declaration of terrorist attack. I am the Mandarin. I will teach the US a lesson. His acting was exaggerated, and his lines were awkward. And behind the camera, several directors holding scripts were gesticulating. Cut. Trevor, your emotions need to be fuller. That kind of perverted madness. Okay, director, I'll prepare a bit more. Ah, where are my drugs? I want a hit to get into character. The so-called, the Mandarin, Trevor Slattery, was lewdly asking for his payment. Gil Chong sneered in space. Indeed, an actor. The real mastermind. His gaze shifted, crossing half the Earth, to a hidden laboratory in the United States. Aldrich Killian. This cripple, who had once been stood up by Tony, had now become handsome and dashing, but the madness in his eyes was even more intense. He stood before a giant experimental tank, looking at the experimental subjects inside, whose bodies were red and on the verge of exploding due to the extremis injection. Perfect, Killian murmured. Tony Stark, soon, you will know what true despair is. I will also soon create the perfect bio-weapon. Watching this scene, Gil Chong not only didn't worry but instead showed a benevolent smile, like someone watching leeks grow well. That's right. Keep up the good work, Killian. Make more of those self-exploding red-hot monsters, and make a big commotion. Even kidnapping the president is fine. If you don't cause trouble, how can I make a grand return? How can I harvest those massive popularity points? Come on, villains. I'm rooting for you. ... Time passed day by day in this boring journey and interesting peeping. Finally, on the 33rd day, the scene before Gil Cheng's eyes completely changed. The small fireball that had been hanging in the sky had now turned into an boundless, colossal wall of flame. It filled his entire field of vision. The sun, this star, which gave life to Earth, was now wantonly releasing its terrifying light and heat. The golden corona churned like a giant dragon, and each ejected plasma stream was several Earths in size. Even from a distance, the terrifying high temperature and radiation had already distorted the surrounding space. If it were before, Gil Chong might have been vaporized before even getting close. But now, Gil Chong took a deep breath, although there was no air here. He not only felt no discomfort, instead, he felt an unprecedented thirst. Every cell was cheering, screaming, craving that endless energy. So beautiful. Gil Chong looked at the massive star before him, his eyes full of obsession. Is this a surface temperature of 6,000 degrees? Is this the bathhouse I wanted? He felt every gene in his body trembling. It was like a person who had been thirsty for 3 days in the desert suddenly seeing a clear lake. He couldn't control himself at all. The system didn't lie to me. With that stellar energy resistance enhancement, this sun is just a warm swimming pool to me. Gil Chong no longer hesitated. He suddenly spread his arms wide, like a prodigal son embracing his lover. Boom! Bioelectric field fully open. He transformed into a golden meteor, plunging headfirst into the churning sea of fire without hesitation. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The golden flames instantly swallowed him. There was no burning sensation as imagined. Instead, it was a warm, unimaginably vast energy, madly surging into his body through his pores. Awesome. So awesome. Gil Chong felt like he was about to ascend to heaven. Power was surging. Cells were evolving. That feeling of fullness was even more comfortable than 1,000 massages. He swam freely in the sea of fire, even flipping over and shouting contentedly. Holy crap. This is too comfortable. Is this the sun? Gil Cheng's eyes glowed as he looked at the endless golden plasma around him, revealing an extremely greedy smile. My little darlings, don't run. I'm going to suck you dry. The sun, this colossal star, accounting for 99.86% of the solar system's mass. At this moment, it was like a restless heart, frantically spewing out millions of degrees of plasma flames. And in the core region, where any substance would instantly vaporize, a shirtless figure, curled into a fetal position, floated silently in the endless golden sea of light. Endless nuclear fusion energy flowed through every pore of Gil Cheng's body, madly pouring into his already nearly perfect physique. Who knows how long passed? Perhaps an instant, perhaps a century. Ding! 4-month charging period complete. Advancement mission. Baptism of the Sun, completed. Congratulations, host. Superman template evolution successful. Current template. Silver body elementary. The system's prompt sounded like a clap of thunder, exploding deep within Gil Cheng's mind. Whoosh! Gil Chong suddenly opened his eyes. In that instant, the previously violent solar core seemed to momentarily freeze. His pupils seemed to contain 2 miniature stars, their golden light even eclipsing the surrounding nuclear flames. Gil Chong exhaled a long breath, a stream of highly compressed, high-energy particles. He stretched, and his bones let out a series of jarring cracks, as if stars were shattering and reforming within his body. Is this the power of the Silver Age? Gil Chong clenched his fist. The feeling was peculiar. If his previous man of steel physique was a heavy tank, then he was now a star destroyer. He could clearly feel that if he wished, he could even push the moon around like a billiard ball. Even with just a gentle puff of air, he could stir up a hurricane in the atmosphere. Light speed flight, Gil Chong thought, and his figure shimmered slightly. The surrounding space seemed to turn into viscous liquid, and time and space became extremely slow in his perception. At this speed, even that red-suited kid who only knows how to run, Barry Allen, might not be able to outrun him now. So, it only takes me 8 minutes to return to Earth now. Or even less. Gil Chong glanced at the distant blue speck, a playful smile curling on his lips. No hurry. He closed his eyes again, finding a more comfortable position to lie in the sea of fire. This sauna is too comfortable. And, by my reckoning, the Mandarin should have just started his performance, right? Let the bullets fly a little longer. Earth. Days passed. This winter was exceptionally cold for the people of the United States. Not because of the temperature, but because of fear. A terrorist calling himself the Mandarin, like a ghost, hijacked screens across the US via television signals. Explosions, attacks, ubiquitous threats of death. The Hollywood Chinese theater was bombed into ruins. Air Force One was threatened, and even ordinary shopping malls were no longer safe. This is the Mandarin's lesson to the US. On TV, the old man with rings on his fingers was still babbling. And the public was nearly driven mad. Where is Iron Man? Where is Captain America, wearing the flag? Why haven't they caught this madman yet? Although Tony Stark and Colonel Rhodes were fighting fires everywhere, those extremist soldiers were like human bombs, impossible to guard against. Panic spread, and amidst this panic, one name was mentioned by more and more people. Homelander. Where is he? Why did he disappear when we needed him most? Online, public opinion had completely exploded. Some were frantically praying, God, please bring Homelander back. With just one glance from him, the Mandarin will turn to ash. Others were angrily cursing. What kind of superhero? What kind of protector? They're all liars. He must be scared. He abandoned us. Even Felicia Hardy, the black cat who once harbored fantasies about Gil Chong, could only leave grumbling after half a month of fruitless waiting outside Stark Tower. Liar. Scumbag. The entire world was calling out the same name. And in the core of the sun, Gil Chong opened his eyes. His superhuman hearing, even across 150 million kilometers, could hear the noisy and desperate cries from Earth. It's about time. Gil Chong stretched, and the surrounding plasma flow was instantly dispersed. He opened the system panel. His popularity points were still increasing, but the growth rate had clearly slowed. It had even begun to stagnate due to his long absence. This wouldn't do. When the leeks are ripe, they must be harvested. If not harvested soon, they would rot in the ground. All right, vacation over. Boom. A super solar flare seemed to erupt on the sun's surface. A golden beam of light instantly broke free from the star's gravity. At a speed that defied the laws of physics, it vanished into the depths of the dark universe. Just 8 minutes later, Earth, New York, inside the luxurious penthouse apartment at Stark Tower, Tony Stark had 2 huge dark circles under his eyes. Holding a cup of cold coffee, he paced nervously in front of a holographic projection. Jarvis, still no trace of that Mandarin's signal source. I swear, when I catch him, I'm going to pull out every single strand of his beard. Tony was in a bad state now. Very bad. Since the Battle of New York, he had suffered from severe anxiety. Even though Gil Chong helped him with palladium poisoning, it didn't cure his mental illness. He built suits day and night. Mark 42 was almost complete, but he still didn't feel safe enough. Especially that fool Homelander, who left without a word and disappeared for half a year. Blonde fool, Tony grumbled, picked up his coffee, and was about to take a sip. Buzz. The air suddenly twisted without warning. Immediately after, a blast of hot air appeared out of nowhere, and the normally constant indoor temperature instantly soared by more than 10 degrees. A figure, familiar beyond words, abruptly appeared on the leather sofa in the center of the living room. With his legs crossed, he even held a can of ice-cold cola, seemingly acquired from nowhere. PFF. Tony spat out the coffee he had just drunk, splashing the holographic projection all over the floor. What the hell? Tony jumped up in fright, his wrist-mounted sensor bracelet instantly lighting up. Parts of the Mark 42 whizzed towards him to protect him. Calm down, Tony. Gil Chong waved his hand, and the bioelectric field that erupted in that instant directly froze the flying armor parts in midair. He took a sip of cola, burped, and looked at the disheveled Tony with an expression of disdain. Half a year gone, and what have you done to yourself? Anyone who knows you would say you're a billionaire, but anyone who doesn't would think you're a homeless man who just crawled out of a dumpster. Tony's eyes widened as he stared intently at the man who had disappeared for half a year. That face was still as punchable as ever. But for some reason, Tony felt that this guy had become even more terrifying. Even just sitting there, the faint sense of oppression emanating from him made Tony feel like he was standing on the surface of the sun. Tony took a deep breath, forcing Jarvis to cancel the suit assembly. He rushed over, looking like he wanted to punch Gil Chong, but ultimately held back. Where have you been for the past 6 months? Tony roared, saliva flying everywhere. And how did you suddenly come back like this? Are you a ghost? Not a sound. Why didn't you even say goodbye before you left? Not even a note. Do you know we've been looking for you like crazy? That black braised egg from S.H.I.E.L.D. almost blew up my phone. Gil Chong wiped the spittle from his face, looking speechless. Stop, stop, stop. Gil Chong made a stop gesture. Tony, you really sound like a menopausal old lady right now. And the hysterical kind, because her son didn't come home at night. Old lady. Tony's face flushed with anger. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? I was worried about you. Do you know how much trouble you caused us after you left? Those media outlets camped out in front of Stark Tower every day asking me, where's Homelander? I'm sick of it. And, Tony paused, a hint of weariness flashing in his eyes. Forget it, now's not the time to talk about this. He walked to the table, picked up his dedicated encrypted phone, and quickly dialed a number. I'm calling that fool Nick now to tell him that Menace is back. So he stopped sending agents to rummage through my trash can every day. The call connected almost instantly. What is it, Stark? Fury's voice also sounded tired. Good news, Director. Tony glanced at Gil Chong, who was leisurely drinking cola, and said grumpily. The canary you were looking for has flown back. He's right here, alive and kicking. There was a second of silence on the other end, followed by the sound of a chair tipping over. I'm on my way. Beep. Hanging up the phone, Tony slumped into a chair opposite Gil Chong, his eyes complex. Seriously, John, you've been gone for so long, did you ever, even for a moment, think of us? Gil Chong put down his cola and gave an extremely perfunctory smile. Of course I did. I missed you all terribly. I missed your ass. Tony cursed directly, rolling his eyes dramatically. But after cursing, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a relieved smile. But speaking of which, Tony leaned back on the sofa, completely relaxed. I'm quite happy you're back. After all, while you were gone, this world turned into a complete mess. Tony pointed to the large screen beside them, which was playing news of the Mandarin's terrorist attacks. See, that madman called the Mandarin. He's carried out a series of bombing attacks all over the world, including across the US. Honestly, Rhodes and I have been on the verge of exploding these past few months. S.H.I.E.L.D. is also running around in circles, but they can't catch this rat's tail. Gil Chong looked at the pretentious old man in the news and sneered inwardly. Isn't this stage set up just for me? He stood up, patted his butt, and made to leave. Since you don't miss me, then I'll leave, all right. I'm sure there are other places in this world that welcome Homelander. Don't do that. Tony quickly jumped up and grabbed Gil Chang's arm. The action was faster than trying to keep a girlfriend. It was just a joke, why are you taking it seriously? Tony said with a sincere and fawning expression. Since you're back, don't leave. Really, the Avengers need you, the world needs you. Most importantly, Tony pointed to his dark circles. I need a good night's sleep. As long as you're here, I feel like this earth won't explode. Gil Chong looked at Tony's expression, secretly pleased. That's right. It's right that you can't do without me. All right then. Gil Chong reluctantly nodded. For the sake of the stock dividends, I'll stay a little longer. Just then, the roar of a helicopter came from the rooftop helipad. Less than 5 minutes later, Nick Fury's iconic black leather trench coat appeared in the living room. He was travel-worn, his single eye bloodshot, clearly having not slept well for a long time either. The moment he saw Gil Chong, Fury's dark face instantly stretched long. Where did you go? Do you know how much panic your disappearance caused? Do you have any sense of responsibility as an Avenger? Fury immediately hit him with a barrage of questions. Gil Chong picked his ear, looking impatient. Stop. I just got back from vacation, I don't want to hear your nonsense. He pointed to Tony beside him. Ask him if you have anything, he's my spokesperson. Tony, although he really wanted to curse, seeing Fury's murderous gaze, Tony still bit the bullet and tried to smooth things over. Ahem, director, he went for secret training. You know, to better protect the Earth. Fury took a deep breath, fighting the urge to draw his gun. All right, training. Fury stared intently at Gil Chong. Then could you please inform us next time before you go for training? We've been looking for you like headless flies for the past 6 months, is that funny? All right, Gil Chong waved his hand dismissively. Next time for sure, next time for sure. If there's nothing else, I'll be going. Don't disturb me from buying a new villa. The old apartment was too small. This time I want a villa with a helipad and a private beach. After speaking, Gil Chong didn't give Fury another chance to speak, striding directly towards the balcony. Boom, a sonic boom. The golden figure instantly shot into the sky, disappearing into the clouds, leaving only silence in the room. Fury looked at the disappearing figure, then turned to Tony, his voice faint. He's not going to disappear for another 6 months, is he? Tony shrugged, taking a sip of his cold coffee. I hope not. Just then, Tony's private phone in his pocket suddenly rang. It was a number only his closest people knew. Tony answered the phone, his expression instantly freezing and turning pale. What? Happy was bombed, right in front of the Dragon Country Theater. The coffee cup in Tony's hand dropped to the floor. Tony Stark's hand trembled as he hung up the phone. Jarvis, prepare the car. I'm going to the hospital. A complex emotion flickered in Nick Fury's single eye. He looked at Tony, who was on the verge of exploding. He knew that Happy Hogan wasn't just a bodyguard, he was one of the few family members Tony had. After Tony left, Fury simply swung his trench coat and turned to stride away. The hospital, intensive care unit. Tony looked through the thick glass at the large man lying in the hospital bed. Happy was covered in tubes from head to toe. Most of his body was tightly wrapped in bandages, like a mummy. The monitor emitted a monotonous beeping sound. Tony pushed the door open and walked in. As if sensing Tony's arrival, Happy struggled to open his swollen eyes. Boss. Happy's voice was hoarse, as if he'd swallowed a mouthful of sand, each word accompanied by a spasm in his lungs. I'm fine. Cough. Those fools, they were at the theater entrance. Shut up, Happy. Tony stood by the bed, his sunglasses hiding his gaze, but not his clenched jaw. You call this fine? You look like a burnt marshmallow right now. Happy strained to twitch the corner of his mouth, as if trying to smile. But it tugged at his wounds, twisting his expression into a knot of pain. Hey, this is the first time anyone's called me a marshmallow. Seeing Happy like this, Tony felt like the reactor in his chest was about to explode. It was anger. It was fear. It was even more a deep sense of guilt. He walked out of the hospital room, facing the barrage of cameras and microphones already waiting at the door. Flashbulbs went off frantically, like sharp swords stabbing into his eyes. Mr. Stark, what are your thoughts on this attack? Is this a provocation from the Mandarin? We heard your bodyguard is in critical condition. Tony took off his sunglasses and looked directly into the cameras. A crazed fire, unlike anything seen before, burned in those caramel-colored eyes. I'll only say this once. Tony spoke to the cameras, enunciating each word clearly. I don't know who you are, the Mandarin. But you listen up. You want war. Fine, I'll give you war. I'm at 10,880 Malibu Point, Malibu, California. The gate's unlocked. If you're a man, stop hiding behind the scenes playing these dirty tricks. Come at me. Just as Tony was declaring war to the world. New York, Long Island. This was a paradise for the rich, a backyard for money. Gil Chong stood before an ultra-luxurious estate spanning dozens of acres. The white European-style architecture, the massive private helipad, and that endless stretch of private beach. This was the smell of money. Mr. Gil Chong, are you satisfied? The real estate agent beside him smiled so hard the powder on his face seemed about to crack. This was an astronomical deal. It'll do. Gil Chong gave a cursory glance. Although it's a bit more remote than my last place, it's quieter. How much? $200 million. The agent carefully quoted the figure. That's already the discounted price. Originally. Charge it. Gil Chong directly pulled out a black card and tossed it over. Anyway, it was the insurance company's money from that sucker's payout. No point letting it go to waste. Spending this money not only meant enjoying life, it also had the added benefit of pissing off that insurance company's CEO. Why not? Yes, I'll process it for you right away. The agent was so excited his hands were shaking. By the way, Gil Chong stopped the agent who was about to run off, a hint of amusement in his eyes. This house is too big. If it's just me living here, wouldn't it seem a bit too lonely? You know, I'm a man who fears solitude. The agent was a smart man, he understood instantly. Of course, the agent gave a knowing smile. Our company offers specialized, well, high-end domestic services. All strictly screened, with clean backgrounds, and very professional. Whatever your preference, we can arrange it for you in the shortest time possible. Gil Chong nodded with satisfaction. Then go ahead and arrange it. Remember, I want the best. After speaking, Gil Chang's feet left the ground, and he slowly levitated. Under the agent's awestruck gaze, he flew directly towards the massive infinity pool in the villa's backyard. Splash, no splash. Gil Chong was like a shark returning to the deep sea, elegantly diving into the water. Then he flipped over, floating on his back on the water's surface. Sunlight bathed his face, warm and pleasant. He closed his eyes, enjoying this rare moment of peace. This was the life. No aliens, no annoying agents. Just sunshine, a mansion, and beautiful women soon to arrive. This simple, unadorned happiness was the standard equipment a transmigrator deserved. Just an hour later, the estate gates opened again. Several stretched limousines slowly drove in. The doors opened, and a line of young women with stunning figures and breathtaking beauty stepped out. It had to be said, when enough money was on the table, the efficiency of capitalism was truly impressive. And among this flock of beauties, one woman stood out particularly, with silver white hair, a coldly elegant yet slightly wild aura. Felicia Hardy, also known as the famous Black Cat. Today, she had deliberately worn a black, deep V evening gown. In her cat-like, cunning eyes, a light of determination shone. Last time, at the press conference, she hadn't managed to get close to this man. This time, hearing this big spender was recruiting, she had signed up immediately. Not just for the money, but for the fascinating power that emanated from that man. Everything is ready, sir. The agent stood by the pool, calling out respectfully. Gil Chong opened his eyes, slowly rising from the water. Water droplets slid down the lines of his marble sculpture-like muscles. This sight made the women on the shore stare wide-eyed, some even subconsciously swallowed. Gil Chong swept a glance over them. His gaze lingered on Felicia for a second, the corner of his mouth curling into a meaningful smile. Not bad, I'm pleased. Let them. Gil Chong was just about to speak, when the phone on the lounge chair by the pool suddenly lit up. A news notification popped up. Breaking news. Tony Stark publicly declares war on the Mandarin. Reveals home address. Gil Chang's finger paused. He looked at the news, his eyebrow raising slightly. Ha, it's starting already. That rich fool really has a death wish. Revealing his address. What was the difference between that and directly shouting, "Come bomb me," at those terrorists? According to the plot, that madman Killian probably already had helicopters on the way. That cliffside villa was about to become a massive explosion site. Tisk. Gil Chong looked somewhat regretfully at the beauties before him that he hadn't had time to enjoy. Then he glanced at the phone screen again. Although the women were tempting. But, that was Tony Stark. That was a globally televised terrorist attack. If he descended from the heavens at the critical moment, caught a missile with one hand, and saved that arrogant Iron Man in the process, wouldn't his popularity points just explode? Women were always available. But this kind of epic chance to show off, if he missed it, it would truly be gone. Sorry, ladies. Gil Chong flew out of the water, directly donning his battle gear. Something urgent's come up. I have to go. You all have fun here, make yourselves at home. After speaking, boom, before anyone could react, a violent sonic boom exploded overhead. The man's figure instantly transformed into a streak of golden light, shooting straight into the sky, flying at extreme speed towards the direction of the west coast. He left behind only a pool churned by the shockwave's giant waves, and a group of beauties left disheveled in the wind. Felicia watched the figure disappearing into the horizon, biting her red lip. The light in her eyes only grew brighter. As I thought. This is the man I set my sights on. The harder he is to get, the more I want him. Malibu, 10,880 Freedom Way. The sea breeze howled past the luxury villa on the edge of the cliff. Tony Stark stood before a massive floor-to-ceiling window. Holding the sensor bracelet used to summon the Mark 42, he stared blankly at the ocean outside. His mind was filled with the tragic image of Happy lying in a hospital bed, covered in tubes. Tony. Pepper Potts stood behind him, holding a suitcase. Her eyes were filled with worry and helplessness. We have to go, really. You announced our home address to the whole world, you're sending an invitation to terrorists. It's not safe, we must leave here. Beside them, Maya Hansen, the botanist who had come to visit Tony, also looked somewhat at a loss. She had originally intended to discuss a formula from years ago, never expecting to be caught up in this suicidal declaration of war. I'm not leaving. Tony turned around, a stubborn glint in his bloodshot eyes. I'm waiting for that fool to show up. I have my armor, I have Jarvis, I can protect this place. Protect. Pepper's emotions began to spiral out of control as she pointed at the Mark 42, which was still not fully assembled on the lab bench. With that prototype that's still in the testing phase. Tony, you're gambling with your life. VRRRRM. Before she could finish her sentence, the dull roar of propellers approaching from the distance abruptly interrupted Pepper's argument. Tony's expression changed instantly. He whipped his head around to look out the window. At the edge of the horizon, 3 attack helicopters painted to look like news choppers appeared. They were approaching the villa with a murderous aura and a determined posture. No nonsense, no negotiations. The missile pods mounted on the belly of the lead helicopter were already glowing with the red light of death. Get down. Tony's pupils shrank as he let out a roar. Swoosh. A missile-trailing fire shattered the massive floor-to-ceiling window with precision. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. Tony watched the missile fly into the living room, looking at Pepper who was right beside him. His brain kicked into overdrive in an instant. Without a moment's hesitation, he snapped his arm up, pointing it at Pepper. Jarvis. Protect Pepper. Clang clang clang. The Mark 42, which had been in standby mode, disassembled instantly. The gold and red pieces flew toward Pepper as if they were alive. A millisecond before the impact of the explosion arrived, the armor precisely encased Pepper's entire body, shielding her firmly within the Man of Steel. Boom! A violent explosion instantly engulfed the entire living room. Flames shot into the sky. The impact, mixed with debris and glass shards, sent Tony flying backward violently. He slammed heavily into the bar counter behind him. Cough, cough. Tony felt as if his internal organs had been displaced, and his ears were filled with a constant ringing. But he couldn't worry about that. He struggled to lift his head and look toward the center of the ruins. There, Pepper, wearing the Mark 42, was shielding Maya Hansen, completely unharmed. Tony. The faceplate opened, revealing Pepper's terrified face. Take her and go. Get out of here, fast. Tony lay on the ground, shouting at the top of his lungs. Jarvis. Get them out of here. Before Pepper could react, the armor's thrusters ignited automatically. It forced her and Maya out through the sea of fire. Meanwhile, Tony himself was left in the collapsing villa. At this moment, he was unarmed, wearing only a casual suit. Outside, the 3 attack helicopters had already hovered just outside the villa. Target confirmed, still inside the building. Inside the cockpit, a cold-faced assassin grinned as he pressed the fire button. Send this billionaire on his way. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 more missiles trailed lethal fire. They streaked toward the ruins where Tony was located in a triangular formation. If these hit home, forget a human, even reinforced concrete would be blown into powder. Tony watched the approaching missiles, a hint of despair flashing in his eyes. He reached out his hand, attempting to recall the armor he had just sent away with Pepper. But the distance was too great. It was too late. Shit. Tony closed his eyes, countless thoughts flashing through his mind. Finally, his mind settled on a figure wearing a star-spangled cape. That fool, didn't he say I couldn't live without him? Where is he? At this critical juncture, in the instant before those 3 missiles were about to send Tony to meet God. Boom. A sonic boom more terrifying than a missile explosion suddenly detonated in the sky. Tony only felt a flash of golden light before his eyes. Immediately after, the 3 missiles that were screaming toward him weirdly stopped in midair. No, they didn't just stop. They were caught by a hand that didn't look particularly thick. But it was a hand that contained world-destroying power, holding them firmly. Tony snapped his eyes open. Amidst the flames and smoke filling the air, a figure wearing a deep blue suit with a red cape fluttering behind him appeared. He stood like an insurmountable mountain, blocking the path in front of Tony. He held the 3 missiles, which were still sputtering fire, in one hand. So this is what you meant by, "I have my armor, I'm safe." The figure turned his head slightly, revealing a face that Tony found incredibly comforting at this moment, yet also extremely punchable. Gil Chong had that playful and arrogant smile on his face. "Tony, your renovation style sure changes fast. What is this? Wasteland apocalypse chic?" Tony slumped on the ground, looking at the figure bathed in firelight, his throat bobbing. What took you so long?" Tony roared, though he was scolding him. But the relief of surviving a disaster couldn't be hidden in his tone. The protagonist always makes his entrance last, don't they? Gil Chong shrugged. He turned his head to look at the 3 attack helicopters still circling outside the window. In that instant, the smile on his face vanished. "Daring to touch my person on my territory." Gil Chang's fingers tightened slightly. Crackle. Those 3 high-explosive missiles were actually crushed into iron pancakes by his bare hands. The explosives inside didn't even have time to detonate before they were snuffed out by the terrifying bioelectric field. "Are you tired of living?" The pilots on the helicopters were completely stunned. They stared through the windshield at the monster who had crushed missiles with his bare hands, their minds going blank. That's Homelander. The intel didn't say he was here. Retreat. Retreat. The pilot pulled the control stick in terror, trying to turn around and flee. Fighting Homelander. That was just asking for a quick trip to the afterlife. However, since Gil Chong had come, how could he possibly let them escape? This was prime material for a "justice served" video delivered right to his door. "Run," Gil Chong sneered. Inside his eyes, 2 crimson glows suddenly lit up. That was heat vision enhanced to 15 million degrees. Sizzle. 2 thick red laser beams erupted instantly. The heat vision sliced through the sky in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 attack helicopters, along with the pilots inside, didn't even have time to scream. They exploded midair. Turning into 3 magnificent fireballs, they plunged into the dark sea below. Insta-kill. This was the power of the Silver Body Elementary. Ding. Detected Iron Man Tony Stark's extreme shock and relief, popularity points plus 1000. Ding. Detected extreme worship from witnesses in the surrounding waters, popularity points plus 500. Listening to the pleasant notification sounds in his mind, Gil Chong retracted the red light from his eyes and slowly turned around. He looked at the dusty and disheveled Tony and straightened his own spotless cape. His face once again wore that kindly smile, full of fatherly love. He reached out his hand and pulled Tony up from the ground. "See, Tony." Gil Chong patted the dust off Tony's suit, his tone earnest. "I told you that you needed me. Without me here, you can't even keep a house. How about it? Do you feel a great sense of security?" Tony Stark looked at the man before him who seemed like a deity against the backdrop of the flames. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something witty to strike back. But looking at the mess of ruins around him, and then at the 3 wrecks still burning on the sea, 1,000 words finally boiled down to one very standard curse. "What the? Are you really human, you guy?" Gil Chong shrugged, looking like it was a matter of course. "Of course, I am Homelander. As long as I'm here, this land, and you, this capitalist, will always be safe." However, Gil Chong glanced at the villa, which had completely turned into an open-air convertible, and clicked his tongue twice. "Tony, your house's defense system really sucks. Next time, remember to increase Stark Industries' security budget. That being said, daring to touch my cash cow right under my nose. That guy called the Mandarin. His path has just become very narrow." "That the Mandarin?" Tony gritted his teeth, his eyes practically spitting fire. Jarvis's servers are offline, and my suits are all in ruins. John, can you find that fool? No matter which corner of the planet he's in, even if I have to dig 3 feet deep, I'll drag him out myself. Gil Chong adjusted his cape, which had been ruffled by the sea breeze. Of course, on this planet, there's no sound I can't hear, and no corner I can't see. Gil Chong pointed to his ear. Just now, I've located the terrorist's lair. Miami. In a seemingly luxurious, but extremely tasteless manner. Miami. Tony was stunned for a moment, then turned to leave. I'll go get a plane right now, and we'll go kill them. Wait. Gil Chong reached out and pressed down on Tony's shoulder. You're just going to rush in like that? Gil Chong shook his head with an expression that said, you're so naive. Tony, you're a superhero, not a street thug. And this is a war. A war of justice against evil. Since it's a war, it needs witnesses. Tony frowned, somewhat puzzled. You mean? Gil Chong took out the surviving phone and casually dialed a number. Those were the numbers of several mainstream media heads he had specifically saved after the last press conference. Hello, this is Homelander. Don't scream, listen to me. Within half an hour, I want to see all your helicopters over Miami. I'll send you the coordinates. Tell all the people of the US to turn on their TVs. Because next, Homelander is going to give them a live show of executing a demon. He hung up the phone. Gil Chong looked at the dumbfounded Tony, revealing his signature benevolent smile. See, this is how you solve problems. Killing someone and crushing their spirit. I want the whole world to see that so-called the Mandarin kneeling before me like a dog, repenting. ... Half an hour later, over a hidden luxurious manor in Miami. The once tranquil wealthy area was now shattered by the deafening roar of helicopter propellers. More than a dozen helicopters, adorned with the logos of major news media, surrounded the manor, making it impenetrable. Lenses of all sizes were pointed at every corner of the manor. At this moment, across the US, and even the entire world, on TV screens and online live streams. Even on the big screens in Times Square, the same scene appeared. It was the This is Homelander special live broadcast. Oh my God, Homelander is really here. I heard the Mandarin is hiding in there. Kill that terrorist. Long live Homelander. Countless viewers screamed wildly in front of their screens, adrenaline surging. Meanwhile, inside the manor, the fearsome, the Mandarin, from television was now wearing a flashy silk bathrobe. Holding a can of beer, he stared blankly at the helicopters outside the window, which were practically shoved in his face. Hey, what's going on? Trevor Slattery, the third-rate British actor, was completely flustered. He grabbed a scarred bodyguard next to him, his voice trembling. Killian didn't say anything about this. This isn't in the script. I'm an actor. I haven't even put on my makeup yet. Where are my rings? Where are my props? The bodyguard, an extremist soldier injected with extremis, his face was also extremely grim at this moment. He looked at the media helicopters in the sky. We've been exposed. The bodyguard pushed Trevor away and yelled into the walkie-talkie. Everyone, grab the actor. Retreat. Through the back door. Hurry. The manor instantly descended into chaos. The terrorists, who had thought they were well hidden, now scurried around in a panic. Several black SUVs roared out of the garage, attempting to break through the back door. However, just as their car hoods peeked out of the gate, boom, a violent sonic boom, like divine punishment, exploded overhead. Even the helicopter propellers were drowned out by the terrifying sound wave. All cameras instantly tilted upwards. A golden streak of light, carrying an unparalleled aura, descended from the sky. Thump! The ground vibrated violently. The manor's sturdy wrought iron gate, along with the cement road at the entrance, instantly shattered into dust. As the smoke and dust cleared, a figure clad in a stars and stripes cape, with a golden A on his chest, hovered half a meter above the ground. He stood with his arms crossed, looking down at the several SUVs that had screeched to a halt. A suffocating smile was on his face. Trying to leave already? Gil Chang's voice, transmitted through all the media's microphones present, clearly spread throughout the world. Whether it's terrorists or the Mandarin, causing trouble on my Homelander's territory and trying to run without even saying hello. Isn't that a bit impolite? Ding. Detected extreme excitement among U.S. citizens, popularity points plus 5000. Ding. Detected extreme fear among terrorists, popularity points plus 200. Drive. Run him over. The extremist soldiers in the SUV's eyes turned red. Their bodies instantly glowed with high-temperature red light, and they floored the accelerator. These modified madmen were confident that their bodies combined with the impact force of a heavy vehicle would be enough to break through any obstacle. Even Homelander. Vroom. Engines roared, and the multi-ton SUV charged like a steel beast, heading straight for Gil Chong. Hey, ants trying to shake a tree. Gil Chong didn't even bother to dodge. He merely extended one hand, palm forward. Bang! A loud crash. The rapidly accelerating SUV slammed into an invisible wall. Its front instantly crumpled and deformed, sending parts flying. The enormous inertia caused the rear of the car to lift high, then smash down heavily. Gil Chong, however, remained suspended in place, not even a wrinkle on his cape disturbed. He held down the steaming wreck with one hand. He lowered his head slightly, looking at the extremist soldier inside the car, whose face was covered in blood and whose body radiated thousands of degrees of heat. Supervision instantly saw through everything. This is extremis. Turning yourself into a bomb. What a laughably crude trick. Ah! The extremist soldier roared, his whole body turning crimson, attempting to self-detonate. However, Gil Chang's eyes merely turned cold. ZZZZT. Too thin, thread-like heat visions, containing tens of millions of degrees of high temperature, instantly shot out. That was the silver tier heat vision, refined by the sun's core. ZZZZT. Those two heat vision beams, containing temperatures of tens of millions of degrees, sliced through the extremist soldier who was trying to self-destruct without any resistance. There was no explosion, because in the microsecond before the explosion could occur, all the organic matter, bones, and even the violent extremist virus inside that soldier's body were instantly vaporized under that terrifying heat. Not even ashes remained, only a distorted heat wave was left, slowly dissipating in the air. Whether it was the terrorists on the scene who had been fleeing frantically, or the news helicopters still circling in the sky, or even the hundreds of millions of viewers across the United States watching their televisions. At this moment, everyone held their breath. Too fast. Too strong. The kind of super soldier who could easily destroy an armored vehicle was as fragile as a soap bubble in front of this man. Gil Chong hovered in midair, his star-spangled banner cape fluttering loudly in the heat wave. He slowly withdrew his gaze, and the red light in his eyes gradually faded away. In its place was a cold indifference toward all living things. Is that all? His voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears through the media's recording equipment. It carried a hint of disappointment, a touch of disdain, and a lofty arrogance. Is this what you call the wrath of the Mandarin? Is this the confidence you have to dare challenge the United States? Gil Chong shook his head, a cruel smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Too weak. So weak that I feel like I'm bullying a group of disabled people. The remaining extremist soldiers finally reacted. The tragic death of their comrade did not make them feel fear. Instead, it completely triggered the violent instincts brought by the extremist virus. Their skin began to turn red, even becoming transparent. The blood vessels flowing like lava under the skin could be clearly seen. The high temperature instantly ignited the lawn beneath their feet. Kill him. For the Mandarin. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 4 or 5 flaming extremist soldiers lunged at Gil Chong from all directions like cannonballs. They were very fast, so fast that the naked eye of an ordinary person could only capture red afterimages. But in Gil Chang's eyes, slow, too slow. It was like a few snails trying to besiege a supersonic fighter jet. Is this your full strength? Gil Chong didn't even bother to move. He just tilted his head slightly and looked at the soldier who had already jumped above his head, his fist carrying a temperature of several thousand degrees. The soldier's face bore a hideous, wild laugh. It was as if he had already seen the image of Homelander's head being blown apart by his punch. However, the next second, bang, a dull, heavy sound. Gil Chong simply raised a hand casually, moving second but arriving first. His palm accurately clamped onto the soldier's throat. The terrifying kinetic energy was instantly zeroed out. The soldier was left suspended in midair just like that. No matter how much he struggled, no matter how the high temperature on his body scorched Gil Chang's palm, that hand remained motionless. Not even a bit of skin was broken. Too noisy. Gil Chang frowned slightly. His fingers applied slight pressure. Crack. The sound of bone fracturing spread across the world through the microphone. The soldier's head slumped powerlessly, and the red light in his eyes quickly extinguished. Gil Chang tossed the body aside like a piece of trash. Boom. The body smashed into another soldier who was rushing over. The massive impact force instantly turned both of them into meat paste. Immediately after, Gil Chang moved. Bang. The air exploded. His figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. In the live broadcast, only a golden lightning bolt could be seen jumping back and forth within the manor. Every pause was accompanied by a loud blast and a mist of blood filling the sky. It was a one-sided, crushing, and suspense-free carnage. Tearing with hands, stomping with feet, slicing with heat vision. Those extremist soldiers, who were like demons in the eyes of ordinary people, were more fragile than toys in Gil Chang's hands. In less than 10 seconds, the battle was over. Gil Chang stood amidst a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. That blue battle suit was still spotless, not even a drop of blood had touched it. The bioelectric field kept all filth at bay. He slowly turned around to face the cameras in the sky. His face wore that smile that made people feel incredibly reassured yet full of awe. Threat cleared. The air here is much fresher now. At this moment, the viewers in front of their televisions went completely wild. My God, this is a real superhero. Good kill. This is how terrorists should be treated. Iron Man, Captain America, they're all little brothers compared to Homelander. Homelander, I want to have your babies. Fear was replaced by power. People were no longer afraid of the so-called Mandarin because they had a more powerful superhero. A superhero who was not only powerful but also decisive and never, Holy Mother, soft-hearted. Ding. Detected that the emotions of the American public are extremely excited. Worship points are breaking through the roof. Ding. Popularity points plus 10,000. Ding. Popularity points plus 20,000. Ding. Popularity points plus 50,000. Gil Chang listened to the notification sounds refreshing like a waterfall in his mind, and his mouth almost stretched to his ears. In just a few minutes, 100,000 popularity points. This was much faster than helping an old lady across the street or saving people from a fire scene. As expected, violence is the fastest way to harvest worship. As long as your violence is used on the right enemies. Ding. Congratulations to the host. Cumulative popularity points have surpassed the million mark. Obtained a new prestige title, Red Hot Popularity. Triggered special reward mechanism, Ability Advancement. Current reward, Super Speed Upgrade. Your flight speed has broken through the light speed barrier. Current limit speed, 1.5 times the speed of light, approximately 450,000 kilometers per second. Boom. A warm current instantly surged through his entire body. Gil Chang felt his legs, and even every cell, undergoing a qualitative change. The flow of time around him seemed to regress. 1.5 times the speed of light. This meant that he could now circle the Earth in less than 0.01 seconds. Previously, flying from Earth to the Sun would have taken him a month. And now, it only takes 5.54 minutes. Sweet. Gil Chang clenched his fist, feeling the surging power within his body. This feeling of constantly becoming stronger was truly mesmerizing. He looked up at Trevor, the Mandarin who had been scared witless. The poor actor was shrinking into a corner of the manor. He was still holding a can of beer, and a large patch of his pants was already wet. Don't kill me. Trevor raised his hands tremblingly. I'm just an actor. My name is Trevor. This is all just acting. Gil Chang, of course, knew he was an actor. But would he say it? Of course not. If he exposed this lie, wouldn't his heroic battle just now become a farce? Heroes need villains. The more evil and powerful the villain, the more it highlights the greatness of the hero. Acting. Gil Chang sneered, his voice spreading across the globe through the microphone. In my presence, no one can act. Your crimes, God knows, and I know. Of course, he didn't move to kill this useless waste. Killing an old man with no ability to resist would affect his glorious image. Leave the rest to the professionals. Gil Chong turned around and struck a perfect pose for the cameras in the sky. Hands on hips, cape flying, gaze resolute. Like a deity guarding the mortal world. Tony, and friends from S.H.I.E.L.D. I've cleaned up here. I'll leave the remaining waste sorting work to you. With that, Gil Chong did not linger. He knew the climax of this play was still to come. Aldrich Killian, the true mastermind behind the scenes, must be hiding in the shadows right now, fuming with rage. His plan ruined, his men slaughtered. With that madman's personality, he would surely stake everything on one last throw. Ambushing Colonel Rhodes, stealing the Iron Patriot armor, and then kidnapping the president. Burning the president to death in a live broadcast across the U.S. Now that's a real big scene. That giant oil tanker at the port would be his final stage. Before that, Gil Chong glanced at the sky. Let the bullets fly for a while. I need to go back and rest for a bit first. After all, saving the world is very tiring. Besides, in the Long Island villa, that scratchy little wildcat is still waiting for me. Thinking of Felicia's hot figure and wild eyes. Gil Chong only felt a fire in his heart. Boom, a world-shaking sonic boom. Gil Chang's figure instantly disappeared above Miami. He was so fast that not even the cameras could capture his afterimage. Only a ring of clouds that lingered for a long time and a crowd of still reveling people remained. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, inside a giant oil tanker docked at a pier. Bang! Killian smashed the television screen in front of him viciously. Looking at the screen full of static. His handsome face was now distorted like a demon's. His body glowed with high-temperature red light due to extreme anger, making his designer suit sizzle as it burned. Homelander. That Homelander. You ruined my plan. You ruined everything of mine. Killian roared, the madness in his eyes almost overflowing. He had originally wanted to use the Mandarin as a puppet to create panic and control the president, thereby taking control of the entire United States. But now, that puppet had been captured, and his extremist soldiers had been slaughtered to the last man. All eyes were focused on that fool wearing the Star-Spangled Banner cape. Good, very good. Killian took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Since you want to be a hero, since you want to show off, then I'll give you an even bigger stage. He turned his head and looked at a few of his trusted subordinates. Initiate Plan B. Go and capture that black man named Rhodes for me. I want that suit of armor of his. Tonight, I want to give Mr. President a big gift. I want to see if you, this so-called Homelander, can still smile when the president is burned to ashes on a live broadcast. Long Island, private estate. When Gil Chang's feet touched his land, at the entrance of the villa, a row of beauties who had been waiting for a long time instantly burst into loud cheers. Homelander. My God, it's the living Homelander. Welcome home, hero. The beauties cheered one after another. Gil Chong adjusted his wrinkle-free stars and stripes cape. A smile full of tolerance and love hung on his face. He waved to the group of beauties. Good afternoon, ladies. Sorry to keep you waiting. Gil Chang's voice was magnetic and gentle, making the women present feel weak in the knees. But I think you've seen the news. There are a lot of bad guys in Miami, and for the safety of the American people, I had to be delayed for a while. Oh, you are so great. A blonde woman excitedly covered her chest. We all saw it. You were like a god descending. Those bad guys were like ants in front of you. Yes, only you can protect us. Facing these fervent flatteries, Gil Chong just waved his hand modestly, but the hint of enjoyment in his eyes could not be hidden. This is what I should do. With great power comes great responsibility. After speaking, he turned his head and looked at the real estate sales manager who had been waiting beside him. Mr. Gil Chong, do you have any instructions? Gil Chong snapped his fingers, took out a black card from his Y and handed it over with 2 fingers. Since the house is bought, someone has to take care of it. Go, contact the best butler team in New York. I want those who have served royalty. Also, now, immediately, right away. Go and clear out all the 82 Lafayette and all the wineries in New York for me. At least 100 bottles. Tonight, I'm hosting a dinner party here. The sales manager's hand trembled, almost dropping the card. 100 bottles of 82 Lafite. How much would that cost? Yes, I'll go do it right away. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. The sales manager, as if holding a gold ingot, scrambled to make a call. As long as this deal was done, the commission alone would allow him to buy an apartment in Manhattan. In this money-driven society, as long as the money is in place, efficiency is often surprisingly high. While waiting for the fine wine and butlers to arrive, Gil Chong certainly wouldn't be idle. Well, ladies. Gil Chong unbuttoned the collar of his battle suit, revealing his strong muscle lines. His eyes scanned every exquisitely dressed beauty present. Since everyone is so enthusiastic, why don't we go to the pool to relax first? I think it's such a beautiful sunny day, it would be a pity not to soak up some sun. A few minutes later, the huge infinity pool in the backyard of the villa was filled with laughter. Gil Chong, wearing blue swim trunks, lay on his back on the water, shirtless. Water droplets slid down his perfectly sculpted muscles, like a Greek statue. The sun shone on him, charging him up. Around him, the beauties were either swimming or playing in the water. But their eyes never left this man. Mr. Gil Chong, do you need sunscreen? A woman with long silver white hair and a black bikini swam over. Felicia Hardy. This cunning little wildcat clearly knew better than others how to seize an opportunity. She held a bottle of sunscreen oil in her hand, looking at Gil Chong seductively. Her fingers intentionally or unintentionally stroked the water, creating ripples. Although your skin looks indestructible, the sun is too harsh, so it's always good to take care of it. Gil Chong slightly opened his eyes, looking at the woman in front of him whose figure was so hot it was practically illegal. His mind was as clear as a mirror. Sunscreen. Applying sunscreen to him, who had bathed in the core of the sun for 4 months. All right. Gil Chong lazily turned over, lying face down on the air mattress, pointing to his back. Then I'll trouble you, Miss Hardy. A hint of triumphant joy flashed in Felicia's eyes. She swam to Gil Chang's side and poured the sunscreen oil into her palm. Then she gently pressed it onto that broad and firm back. The feel was amazingly good. Firm, yet full of elasticity. Felicia's fingers slid along the muscle lines, massaging and whispering softly. I saw on the news that the terrorists are planning an even bigger attack. Aren't you worried at all? Gil Chong closed his eyes, feeling the soft, boneless hands on his back, and the corners of his mouth slightly curved upwards. Worried? Why should I worry? In this world, only the weak worry about tomorrow. And I. Gil Chong turned over, grabbed Felicia's wrist, and pulled her closer. Their noses were almost touching. Felicia could even feel the scorching aura emanating from this man, like a blazing sun. I am tomorrow. As long as I want, those so-called terrorists, even if they hide in hell, I can drag them out and dry them. Felicia's heart skipped a beat. This is power. Absolute, intoxicating power. She felt her legs go a little soft. You are so domineering. Felicia's eyes were hazy, and she instinctively wanted to lean into Gil Chang's arms. However, Gil Chong let go at this moment and lay back down. Okay, the sunscreen is well applied. You can go get a drink over there, I want some quiet. Felicia was stunned for a moment, then gave this insensitive man a slightly resentful look. But she didn't dare to cause trouble and obediently swam away. Gil Chong sneered inwardly. Little trickster, playing hard to get with me. I am Homelander, not some horny fool. What you can't get always stirs desire, what's too easy is boring. Besides, the night is long. Night fell. The entire Long Island estate was lit up, like a crystal palace by the sea. That sales manager really didn't brag. A professional butler team of 20 people had taken over the operation of the villa. The long dining table was covered with a white tablecloth, and silver candlesticks flickered with faint light. 100 bottles of 82 Lafite were neatly arranged on the wine rack next to it. The overwhelming scent of money was even more intoxicating than the aroma of the wine. Gil Chong sat at the head of the long table. He had changed into a comfortable silk bathrobe, his collar slightly open, and he was swirling a glass of red wine in his hand. And on both sides of the dining table, more than 20 exquisitely dressed beauties sat upright. Each person had an exquisite French feast in front of them. But the minds of these women were clearly not on the food. Mr. Gil Chong, I toast you. To the hero of America. To tonight. One by one, the beauties came forward with wine glasses, trying their best to attract Gil Chang's attention. Some deliberately bent over to reveal deep cleavage, while others frantically flirted with their expressive eyes. Gil Chong accepted all comers. He drained his glass. Anyway, with his physique, it was no different from drinking grape juice. Watching Gil Chong smile at every woman. He even casually put his arm around a blonde and joked a few words. Felicia, sitting a little further back, couldn't sit still. She gritted her teeth. These common women, are they worthy of competing with her? She stood up, picked up her wine glass, and walked to Gil Chang's side with an elegant cat-like stride. She didn't rush to toast like the others. Instead, she directly picked up the decanter on the table and personally filled Gil Chang's wine glass. Her movements were elegant, and her eyes were focused. I see you seem to prefer the taste after decanting for 30 minutes. Felicia said softly. Just like some things, you need to wait patiently to taste the most wonderful flavor, don't you agree? These words had a very strong double meaning. Gil Chong looked up at this clever woman and smiled. You understand very well. He raised his wine glass and clinked it with Felicia's. Indeed, patience is a virtue. I hope your patience brings you rewards. Felicia's heart swelled with joy. She felt she had made the right gamble. This man liked smart people, and even more, ambitious smart people. However, just as the banquet was about to end, and everyone was slightly tipsy, Gil Chong put down his knife and fork. He elegantly wiped his mouth with a napkin. The entire room instantly fell silent, everyone looking at him expectantly. Especially Felicia, who straightened her back, full of confidence. Gil Chong looked around, his gaze sweeping over every woman's face. Finally, he stood up and stretched. Tonight's wine is good, the food is good. The people are even better. He snapped his fingers, a smile appearing on his face. So, making choices is too troublesome. I, for one, hate making choices. Tonight, all of you stay. Come to my room. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole room was in an uproar. The beauties were first stunned, then one by one, expressions of surprise and even ecstasy appeared on their faces. Homelander is going to have an impart. This not only didn't make them disgusted but instead made them feel a strange thrill and honor. To be chosen by such a god, even if it was shared, it was still a form of capital. Only Felicia. Her smile froze on her face. Everyone. To lump her, a top-tier thief, with these common women. This was an insult, but when she saw Gil Chang's smiling yet unsmiling eyes, which seemed to see through everything, her little bit of pride instantly shattered. She understood. In front of this man, she had no right to bargain. Either join, or get out. Felicia took a deep breath and drank the red wine in her glass in one gulp. The fighting spirit reignited in her cat-like eyes. So what if there were many people? Since we're playing, I'll be the most outstanding one. It's an honor, my hero. Felicia was the first to stand up, walked to Gil Chang's side, and linked her arm through his. At the same time, thousands of kilometers away, a certain Air Force base under the cover of night. A steel battle suit painted in the colors of the Stars and Stripes, Iron Patriot. That is, Colonel James Rhodes was tracking the Mandarin's signal. However, what he didn't know was, this was simply a trap. Z's. In the darkness, a scorching, red-hot hand suddenly grabbed the battle suit's ankle. Immediately after, 7 or 8 extremist soldiers, glowing red with high temperature, rushed out of the shadow. Who is that? Rhodes was greatly alarmed, but before he could activate the weapon system, that red-hot hand had already melted the battlesuit's joint power system with its terrifying high temperature. For the Mandarin, for Killian, the bald man leading the group grinned sinisterly and forcibly tore open the battlesuit's mask. On this muggy night, not only was Homelander reveling, the villains also began their final frenzy. Take the battlesuit away. Now, we have the key to enter Air Force One. Mr. President, your flight is delayed. Tens of thousands of feet in the sky. Iron Patriot was soaring through the sky at an extremely high speed. However, beneath that cold metal faceplate at this moment, it wasn't the upright Colonel Rhodes, but Eric Savin, Killian's top enforcer. His eyes flickered with the dark red glow characteristic of extremis, and a cruel smile played on his lips. This feeling is truly amazing. Eric looked at the light dot on the radar representing Air Force One. He lightly pressed the accelerator button for the thrusters. With this suit, which represented the highest trust of the U.S. military, he easily passed all security identification codes. 10 minutes later, inside Air Force One, chaos reigned. The president was picked up like a small chicken amidst the horrified bodies of his bodyguards. "Mr. President, your flight has been rescheduled." Eric's modified voice came through the faceplate, laced with deep mockery. Immediately after, he activated the suit's thrusters, smashing through the plane's cabin wall. Carrying the most powerful man in the world, he vanished into the vast night, leaving behind only a runaway Air Force One plummeting, and the entire United States on the verge of panic. The next day, early morning. Inside a luxurious manor on Long Island. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the expensive velvet curtains, falling onto the extra-large soft bed that could accommodate more than 20 people. The air was still filled with the lingering scent of extravagance from last night's revelry. On the bed, those usually unattainable socialites and young models were now like boneless invertebrates, all sleeping soundly, unable to even move a finger. Except for one person, Felicia Hardy. This black cat, with her astonishing physique, held a cup of freshly brewed hot coffee in her hand. She walked in from outside, her long legs striding. "Good morning, my hero." Felicia walked to the bedside. Looking at Gil Chong, who had already opened his eyes, a lazy and contented smile appeared on her face. She placed the coffee on the bedside table, then naturally knelt by the bed. Reaching out her hands, she gently massaged Gil Chang's temples. "You really wore everyone out last night." Felicia's voice carried a hint of husky allure. Now, she was the only woman who could still stand and maintain her elegance to serve Homelander. This was enough to explain her status. Gil Chong leaned against the headboard, enjoying this top-tier service, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Not bad." He reached out and pinched Felicia's chin, looking at this ambitious woman. "It seems your stamina is better than I imagined." Of course, Felicia took the opportunity to rub against Gil Chang's palm like a cat. "As long as you need me, I'm always available." Just as the ambiguous atmosphere was growing thicker, and Gil Chong was about to have a morning workout. Buzz, buzz. The encrypted phone on the bedside table vibrated frantically at a most inopportune moment. Gil Chong frowned, and his interest instantly dissipated by more than half. He picked up the phone and looked. Tony Stark. Tisk. This rich dog really knows how to pick a time. Gil Chong answered the call somewhat impatiently. Before he could even speak, Tony's anxious, almost explosive voice came from the other end. "John, where are you? Still sleeping? Something big has happened. Something huge." Tony's voice was accompanied by loud wind noise and engine roars, indicating he was moving at high speed. "The president was kidnapped. Last night, that fake Iron Patriot attacked Air Force One. Now the entire White House is going crazy. SHIELD and the FBI are running around like headless chickens. We need you. Now. Immediately." Gil Chong moved the phone away slightly, picked at his ear, and a cold, knowing smile appeared on his face. "Finally here." It was slightly slower than he had anticipated. "Relax, Tony." Gil Chong slowly took a sip of coffee. "It's just a kidnapped president. What's the big deal? Hollywood makes several movies about saving the president every year. You're Iron Man. Since you know the news, why don't you go save him? Do you have to trouble me, Homelander, with such a small matter?" Tony on the other end was clearly choked, and after 2 seconds of silence, he erupted into a louder roar. "That's the president, not the old lady next door. And that lunatic Killian has hundreds of extremist soldiers. He's also on an oil tanker full of oil. I only have a few suits still in testing. How am I supposed to handle this? I believe in you, Tony." Gil Chang's voice was full of that infuriating encouragement. "You're a genius, a billionaire, a playboy. This small scene won't stump you. Go on, fight like a true hero. When you really can't hold on, I might consider coming to save the day for you." After speaking, Gil Chong didn't give Tony a chance to curse, and directly hung up the phone. "Want me to go now? What a joke." The excitement had just begun, and the despair hadn't fermented to its peak. If he went now, wouldn't the shock of a savior descending from the sky be greatly diminished? What he was waiting for was the globally televised execution moment. That moment when everyone desperately screamed. That was the best time to harvest popularity points. He had just hung up the phone for less than 2 seconds. Buzz. The phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number, but Gil Chong could guess who it was with his eyes closed. Hello, Director Fury. Gil Chong answered the phone, his tone full of impatience. If you're also calling about that trivial matter with the president, then spare me. Gil Chong. Nick Fury's voice was deep and suppressed, like a volcano about to erupt. This is a national crisis. As a member of the Avengers, you have an obligation. Obligation? Gil Chong sneered, interrupting him. Fury, I think you've got one thing wrong. I'm here to be a superhero, not a babysitter for your shield. Just a few terrorists. If your shield can't even handle that, what are your 10,000 agents doing? Cosplaying. Don't bother me with every little trivial matter. I'm very busy. Beep, beep. Fury listened to the busy signal, so angry he almost crushed the special encrypted phone. Trivial matter. The president is about to be barbecued, and that's trivial. Meanwhile, in the manor's bedroom, Gil Chong casually tossed his phone aside and got out of bed. He glanced at Felicia, who was looking at him with adoration. You can go now, Gil Chong said indifferently. Leave your private number. When I have time, I'll call you again. Okay, my hero. She stood up very sensibly and wrote down a phone number. Even before leaving, she boldly stood on tiptoe and lightly kissed Gil Chang's cheek. I await your call. Watching Felicia's swaying figure as she left, Gil Chong nodded in satisfaction. This woman truly knew her place. Then, he turned around and looked at the pile of women still sleeping on the bed, his brows slightly furrowed. Tisk, what a hassle. He didn't want these common beauties to linger in his mansion. Butler, Gil Chong called out towards the door. Send all these people away, and give each of them a severance package. Also, change my bedsheets to the best Egyptian cotton. After dealing with these trivial matters, Gil Chong, wearing only swimming trunks, walked out onto the balcony. Today's sun was exceptionally bright, with not a cloud in the sky. Nice weather. Gil Chong stretched. Boom. He tapped his toes, and his entire body instantly shot into the sky, hovering 10,000 meters high. He closed his eyes and spread his arms. He indulged in the bath of solar radiation, every cell in his body greedily devouring energy. While charging, he activated his super hearing and supervision. His gaze crossed thousands of kilometers, locking onto an abandoned port in Florida. There, a drama grand enough to shock the world was unfolding. Florida, Pensacola port. Night fell, and a huge abandoned oil tanker was docked by the shore. The deck of the oil tanker was brightly lit. Hundreds of fully armed mercenaries and extremist soldiers stood ready. And on the most conspicuous crane arm, the U.S. president, who always appeared on TV news, was being hoisted high in the air like a salted fish. Are you ready? Aldrich Killian wore an expensive custom-made suit. A manic smile of complete control was on his face. He adjusted his tie, facing the camera lens in front of him. This is my masterpiece. This is the gift I will give to this world. Go live. With an order, the signal instantly connected to all channels worldwide. And in the clouds several kilometers away, a pitch-black Quinjet was in stealth mode, rapidly approaching. Inside the cabin, Tony Stark wore a makeshift battlesuit. Beside him sat Captain America, holding his shield, Hawkeye, checking his arrows, and Natasha, wiping her widow's bites. 1 minute until we reach target airspace, the pilot reported. Everyone, this will be a tough fight. Captain America said in a deep voice, his gaze firm. We are facing a group of madmen who can self-destruct. But for the president, for the country, we must win. Tony didn't speak. He just stared intently at the live broadcast on the screen. On the screen, Killian walked to the camera with a sinister grin. He reached out and tore off the mask from the president's head, revealing the president's face, twisted with fear. Then, Killian pulled out a gleaming tactical dagger from his pocket and twirled it in his hand. He looked at the camera, at billions of viewers around the world, and displayed a devilish smile. Good evening, America. Tonight, I will represent God, represent a new evolution, and execute your president here.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.